Hugo Henrique Moore to get 10% off on anime lamps. In a classroom, a young man begins to panic, questioning whether he really went back to before the college entrance exams. He's in the Xia Kingdom, at Ancheng's #1 high school, class 7 of the 3rd year. Suddenly, he jumps to his feet shouting, drawing everyone's attention. Frantic, he wonders what kind of horror story he's living in. If he was going to reincarnate, it could have at least been after the exams. Since ancient times, humanity on the Blue Star has suffered from a catastrophe known as the Secret World Invasion. These secret realms are connected to other worlds and are filled with terrifying monsters that sometimes use portals to invade the human world. The most powerful creatures can destroy entire nations and threaten all of humanity. To fight them, humans developed a system of beast genes that allows users to awaken monster models and genetic talents. These warriors are the only ones capable of saving mankind. Over time, they became far more respected than ordinary people, and the entire Blue Star entered an era where martial strength means everything and everything else is considered inferior. Only martial cultivators can reach the top. Suddenly, systems begin to appear in the minds of several young people, echoing a message. World transfer complete. Host body, Yihi, implanting memories. The protagonist lowers his head, wondering if his new name really is Yihi, just a simple high school student. The classmates around him start mocking him, saying he must be having another nightmare or calling him a loser, asking if he really plans to take the college exams. A girl sneers, telling him to give up and go home since he's destined to be a street cleaner for the rest of his life. Yehe gets annoyed, thinking that every protagonist is ridiculed at the start of their story. He realizes that the body's original owner didn't have a good reputation, and from the memories he just received, he recalls that the former Yehe's parents had an accident during his 2nd year, which made him lose all focus on his studies. Even though he used to have good grades, he ended up completely unmotivated. The girl from before starts getting angry for being ignored and yells, asking what he's staring at, reminding him they're in a martial arts class, and asking if he wants to settle things with a fight. Hearing this, Yehe panics, trying to understand what she means since he was only thinking. Apparently, the previous owner of this body didn't study properly, and now he's the one who'll have to face the consequences. Frustrated, he thinks he's inherited a humiliating and miserable life. At that moment, the teacher walks to the center of the room and calls for silence, telling everyone to pay attention. He asks if they're ready since they're about to begin the injection of the genetic modification serum. He tells them to believe in themselves, reminding them that all 3 years of training and martial energy cultivation have led to this moment. Adjusting his glasses, he shoots a look directly at Yehe and comments that those who never took the lessons seriously. But Yehe tunes him out, thinking this is all some kind of joke. After all, he's not the one who messed up before. Still, he decides not to worry because now he's the one in control. He's inherited this body, and with a cold smile, he promises to do whatever it takes to turn the situation around. Everyone proceeds to the genetic injection conference, held in the special hall of Ancheng's #1 high school. The students are excited, chatting about what they might awaken. Maybe a level 3 rock mountain, or a level 4 sea dragon. Another boy laughs and says that Yehe will probably just end up a weak level 1. The preparation machine starts making noises, releasing gas, and when it opens, it reveals several capsules containing genetic mutations. The teacher explains that this is the genetic awakening serum, containing primitive genes from all the magical beasts known to mankind. After injection, each person will absorb a random gene and awaken their abilities. He notes that normally the stronger one's body, the more powerful the gene obtained, and tells them to remain calm, just accept the energy flow when it starts. Then he calls them one by one, injecting the serum directly into their veins, granting each student the genes of these creatures. Immediately, a strange energy begins to radiate from their bodies, filling the hall with a powerful aura. Some start feeling sick, others faint, unable to withstand the pressure of the injection. Yehe watches in fear, thinking everyone's reacting strangely and that this won't be easy. Without hesitation, he injects the serum directly into the vein of his neck, saying that no matter what happens, he'll just get it over with. His eyes shine intensely, but nothing happens. The teacher approaches, remarking that apparently nothing much has changed. Yehe tries to play it off, saying maybe he got a faulty dose. The same girl mocks him again, laughing that he didn't awaken anything at all. She says a warrior without an awakening is like a bird without wings, doomed to crawl among the rest. She adds that it suits him perfectly and that now he can go sweep streets instead of trying to be a warrior. Yehe feels anger building up, remembering how she mocked him earlier in class. Suddenly, unbearable pain hits him, and he wonders what this feeling is. A system screen appears before his eyes with the message, Infinite Monster Model Obtained. Host, Yehe. Martial Abilities. Basic Chi Technique of the 9th student, Palm Block, Iron Body Technique. Monster Model Extracted. Yehe writhes in agony while the girl watches disdainfully, asking what he's pretending to do, saying there's no reason to act if he didn't awaken anything. He shouts for everyone to back away immediately. She snaps back asking why, but Yehe, eyes glowing and a dense aura emanating from his body, warns that if they don't move now, it'll be too late. Then his energy erupts, transforming his aura into that of a colossal metallic monster. The pressure blasts the girl and everyone nearby away. The students scream that the shockwave was too strong, asking who could have awakened something so terrifying. Some complain that they can't stand the energy and start vomiting. Among the awakened, one of them looks around and asks if anyone there is stronger than him. The system screen reappears, displaying Rank a Model, Daimora the Mad Flame, Abilities, Molten Fire Breath, Sporadic Absorption, Advanced Strength. Demora, the Lord of Flames, will be unlocked once module compatibility reaches 100%. Current compatibility, 3%. Yihi keeps radiating crushing pressure throughout the room and in a firm tone declares that he has awakened a rank A model called Demora, the infinite monster model. Looking at his own hands, his voice trembling, he asks if the system will finally start helping him. The other students, still terrified, glance at each other and ask if that guy was really the loser Yihe. Realizing his aura had forcibly pushed everyone back, they're stunned to see that even Wang Xing fainted, even though she had awakened a second-level magical beast, the Flame Claw Scorpion. It makes them wonder just what exactly Yihe has awakened. Regaining control, he laughs awkwardly and apologizes, saying he made a little mess during his awakening, but reminds them he did tell everyone to step back earlier. Suddenly, an announcement echoes through the school speakers, informing that all awakened students must proceed to the detection test to identify their magical beast type and martial level. In another room, several genetic analysis devices are ready for the examination. These machines measure the gene and martial level of the awakening. The first evaluated, Li Xinyuan, awakens a level 3 magical beast lineage, Swift Spider. His classmates comment that he's really lucky. He was just a normal student and now became number 1, saying powerful lineages are truly unfair. Next is Chu Zhou, considered the class's top student. Not only is he a level 9 martial apprentice, but he also awakened an impressive lineage, the Ice Demon Dragon. Everyone says that this time, the champion of Ancheng City will be him. Then they call Miss Lu, and the students are amazed to learn she's also a level 9 martial apprentice and has awakened a rare level 4 lineage, the Infernal Sparrow, a creature that, in its true form, could destroy most of the city and is feared even by grandmasters. The protagonist watches as numbers appear on the screen and begins to reflect, realizing that the models awakened by others were classified as level 3 or 4, while his is marked as rank A. Suddenly, his turn is announced, and he hears people around him excitedly commenting on what they saw happen when he received the injection, saying, "It's going to be amazing." As he walks toward the device, everyone watches with admiration, whispering that his aura is intense and that he'll surely become someone powerful. Some shout that they need to befriend him, while several girls sigh, saying he's really handsome. Along the way, Yihi thinks about how this world revolves entirely around martial power. When he reaches the machine, he steps inside and the students continue their chatter, saying that with that aura, his level must be incredible. The atmosphere is filled with anticipation, though one person in the back remains silent, watching carefully, sensing that the powerful energy earlier came from Yihe and deciding to keep an eye on him. When the test begins, the device's screen displays an error. The system identifies him as only a level 3 martial disciple, but the rest of the data doesn't appear. His beast lineage is listed as unknown. Instantly, everyone who had admired him burst into laughter, mocking him and saying that a level 3 disciple is pathetic, since even middle school students could beat him in a fight. They say that an unknown lineage probably means he doesn't even have one, and that even if he does, whatever lineage someone that weak could awaken would be insignificant. They add that the energy from before must have just been a system glitch. As soon as he steps out of the device, laughter echoes throughout the room, calling him a loser once again. Yehe, however, keeps a serious expression, thinking that this was already expected. The model wasn't detected because it's the infinite monster model. At that moment, the system interface reappears, displaying Infinite Monster Model Upgrade Guide. This model can be improved by completing missions or increasing reputation. Additional models can be acquired by performing these actions. Number of upgrades, 0. Reading that, Yihi starts to laugh, realizing that his rank model is different from the others, and that as long as he meets the conditions, he can have infinite models. That makes him shout in excitement that this way, he'll become the king of monsters. The next day at school, the teacher sips his tea and looks at him in confusion, asking if he really plans to stop attending classes to study for the entrance exams at home, and if Yihe thinks anyone would believe that. The protagonist firmly says he wants to improve, admitting that he's far behind everyone else and needs special training over the next few days. If he keeps the same pace as his classmates, he'll be doomed. The teacher replies that if he truly wants to become a warrior, he must enter college, but reminds him that even though he awakened a lineage, his foundation is weak. Therefore, he'll probably fail the entrance exams and should prepare to repeat the year. Yihe looks at him and shouts desperately that the teacher may not understand, but he awakened a powerful lineage, and with effort and intense training, he'll succeed. He begs the teacher to look into his eyes and see his sincerity, insisting he'd never lie about something like that. The teacher studies him for a few seconds, then admits that his eyes truly show determination. In the end, he allows Yihe to study at home, but confirms he'll still have to repeat the year. Outside, the protagonist walks along the sidewalk, recalling that his parents' house was sold for $600,000, and that with the accident compensation totaling more than $1 million, he has enough money to start his journey. He reflects that to increase his power, he has 2 options: level up as a warrior, or improve his compatibility with Demora. According to the system's information, each model starts with only 1% compatibility, but Demora already has 3, and he doesn't know where the other 2 came from. He quickly concludes that the answer is simple. The model absorbed part of the genetic awakening serum's power, increasing its compatibility. That proves that the genetic serum in this world can enhance model abilities. Therefore, instead of just training hard, he can use money to speed up the process. Convinced, he decides he must buy the genetic enhancement serum as soon as possible. Swiping his student card to enter the subway, he's amazed to notice that everyone there has already awakened their own lineages. After awakening his model, Yihee gained a unique ability called Life Magnetic Field. Demora can detect the vital signs of creatures by releasing its magnetic life field, allowing the protagonist to sense warriors' chi burning like furnaces and perceive their beast's presence. Excited, he starts to laugh, murmuring, "Warriors and monsters." And as he witnesses it all, he feels an uncontrollable desire to fight rising inside him. After all, Demora is the king of monsters in his world, a being destined to dominate all life. However, Yihee is still a beginner, unable to fully control Demora's power. When he grows stronger, he'll show the world who the true king of monsters is. Suddenly, someone taps his shoulder, startling him. A beautiful woman smiles and winks, telling him to stop staring at people. Embarrassed, Yihee apologizes, saying he didn't mean to. She laughs softly, saying it's fine and that he probably just awakened his beast gene and can't control the power yet. It's completely normal. Curious, she asks what he's doing there. He says he came to buy genetic medicine but doesn't know where to go since the place is so big and confusing, and asks if she could help him. The woman seems surprised, asking if he really intends to buy that kind of product and already start using it. Confused by her reaction, Yihee asks if there's something wrong with that. She says no, but explains that genetic medicines are extremely expensive and that frequent use can cause resistance, reducing their effects over time. She advises that to maximize results, it's better to wait until his lineage reaches its peak. Yihee asks how much a genetic dose costs, and she explains that, at his current level, he'll need a beginner's dose, priced at around 400,000. Hearing that, he feels discouraged, thinking it's too expensive. He couldn't even buy 5 doses with all the money he has. He asks if she knows anyone who could offer a discount. The woman hands him her business card, saying that, with a recommendation from a veteran warrior, he might get a better price. Taking the card, Yihee thanks her sincerely, and she smiles, saying that someday they'll meet again. Determined, he looks at the card and says it's time. Checking his balance, he sets out to buy, determined to invest in his growth. Later, in his apartment, under the light of the ship reflected through the window, a dense energy bursts from his body. The system screen appears, showing that the beast model, Demora, the Mad Flame, has increased its compatibility from 3 to 4%, and then to 7%. Yihee's body radiates more and more power, and the system also shows his stats rising from 10 to 15, while his weapon level reaches 7. Exhausted and drenched in sweat, he bends over, smiling with satisfaction, saying that this is how you level up. However, he notices that with each genetic dose, the progress becomes smaller, since as his body improves, further gains are harder to achieve. Still, he's satisfied, saying it wasn't bad at all, as he achieved in a few minutes what others would take 3 years of training to reach. Thinking about it, he believes that if he can activate Demora's lineage power, he'll become #1 in the entrance exams. Looking at his hands and smiling, he reflects that if a loser can't surpass the ordinary, then he truly is worthless. With everything ready, he decides it's time to enter the secret realm. These portals are ranked from E to S, and the higher the rank, the stronger the beasts that dwell within. No human can defeat S-rank creatures. If they invaded the real world, they'd cause an apocalyptic disaster. After preparing, he heads to Ancheng's rank E Secret Realm #3. Walking through the area, he notes there are fewer people than he expected, but realizes that's because the realm is old and most of its treasures have already been plundered, leaving only weak beasts, usually hunted by beginners. Approaching the receptionist, he informs her that he has a pass for Secret Realm #3. She asks him to sign the contract in front of her before entering. After filling out the form, he walks toward the portal, feeling his excitement grow. Gazing at the portal's light, he says, this is only the beginning of his journey to becoming the king of monsters, and without hesitation, he leaps inside. On the other side, he's awestruck by the sight of the Kanglan, Anhui, and Taijin stars shining in the sky, saying that even though he'd read about them in books, seeing them in person is completely different. Everything feels vast and magnificent. While still admiring the glow of the stars and the vastness of the place, a rabbit slowly approached. It was a first-rank beast known as a blood rabbit. The animal lunged toward him, but Yihee reacted instinctively, grabbing it with a swift, precise movement. He let out a mocking laugh, asking if the rabbit was stupid for thinking he wouldn't notice it. Thanks to his life magnetic field ability, he could sense everything around him with extreme clarity, and within seconds, he exterminated the blood rabbit. After destroying it, a small magic core appeared in his hand. Observing the shining stone, he noticed it was white in color, calm in quality, probably worth about 1,000 yuan. He thought to himself that he had just earned 1,000 yuan in a matter of minutes, a huge profit compared to what a normal person would take an entire month to make. However, looking at the core again, he concluded that focusing only on white stones would be a waste of time and that the ideal move would be to hunt a second-rank beast. Just then, a roar echoed beside him. A grotesque creature emerged from the shadows, a second-rank demonic insect. Excited, Yihee drew his dagger, ready to test his abilities. He charged forward and easily pierced his opponent, remembering what he'd read about that species in the monster encyclopedia. Compared to the steel-hard shell covering its back, the demonic insect's abdomen was much more vulnerable. The strike wounded it badly, but also enraged it. The creature lunged at him, and Yihee dropped his weapon, channeling his energy and firing a beam of light resembling a kamehameha. The attack only made the insect angrier, and it counterattacked by spitting 2 poisonous projectiles. Startled, Yihee barely dodged them and muttered in amazement, wondering if that monster's mandibles could really fire projectiles. Though he escaped, he grew furious at seeing his clothes damaged, shouting if the monster had any idea how much they cost. He soon realized that, at his current martial level, he couldn't defeat the creature without a powerful technique to back him up. Even with a deep dantian and above-average vitality, he could barely unleash half his strength. He blamed the body's former owner for being such a failure in studies and training. With no alternatives left, he thought there was no choice. He'd have to cheat. He focused, and his eyes began to glow. A dense energy filled the surroundings as he shouted to Demora, enraged to activate the demon emperor lineage. His body transformed, arms covered in scales and bulging muscles like those of a real beast. His strength rose from 15 to 21 points. When the insect charged again, Yihe leapt straight at it, diving into its mouth and tearing it apart from the inside, making its body explode outward. Gasping for air, he declared that, with his physique raised to 21 points, he had completely crushed the second-ranked demonic insect. Even after reversing the transformation, he had to release the excess heat built up inside his body. Thick smoke came from his hands, and he joked to himself that he was turning into a jet engine. Looking down, he noticed that his newly bought sword had been completely corroded by the monster's poison. A weapon worth 250,000 credits, destroyed by a mere second-rank beast. This had to be a scam, the quality control was terrible, and the review would definitely be negative. Soon after, his stomach growled loudly, and he realized that the energy consumption during the transformation must have been massive, since he was starving and hadn't brought any food. Suddenly, a delicious aroma filled the air, making his mouth water. The scent came from the green magic core the demonic insect had left behind. Without thinking much, he gave in to hunger and swallowed it. As soon as he did, a system window appeared before his eyes. Monster Model Demora, Enraged Demon Emperor. Compatibility increased from 7 to 7.3%. Yihe widened his eyes, surprised to realize that compatibility increased by consuming cores. Smiling, he compared. He had spent hundreds of thousands on a genetic potion and gained only 1%. But a single green core raised it by 0.3. If he could get 3 or 4 of those, it would equal an entire potion. He also thought that the white core he'd picked up earlier would probably give at least 0.1%. Happy with the discovery, but frustrated over the money he'd wasted, he laughed and cried at the same time, calling that world a true pay-to-win. Regaining focus, he placed 2 fingers on his forehead and murmured that he would turn all that frustration into motivation. He swore to himself that he'd hunt until he was completely satisfied. With a determined look, he activated his life field, expanding his senses to detect any demonic presence nearby. The following afternoon, the system tab appeared again, displaying Model Demora, Enraged Demon Emperor, Compatibility, 9%, overall physique, 15.8. As he walked, Yihe thought that after reaching 9% compatibility, consuming white cores no longer had any effect, so it was more worthwhile to sell them for money. When he arrived at the receptionist's desk, he poured them all onto the counter and stated that he had 20 white cores and 1 green. The clerk was stunned, asking if he was joking, since a mere high school student could never have gathered that much. After completing the sale, everyone in the area began staring at him curiously, but Yihe ignored them, commenting that according to government rules, martial artists had to hand over part of their spoils. A green core was equivalent to 5 white ones. In total, he received 200,000 Xia Kingdom credits. Thinking about his next steps, he remembered that only 9 days remained until the college entrance exam and decided to head to Secret Realm D Class number 4. When he arrived, he noticed a group already gathered. The driver asked his captain, Lin, if they'd be able to complete the Jade Flower mission this time. Lin replied that during their last expedition, they had already found the area where it grows, but old Chen had been injured while fighting a monster and wouldn't be joining them. A woman commented that without him, only 5 people remained. Another warrior confirmed and reminded them that the rules required at least 6 participants to enter a D-class secret realm. Calmly, Lin said that wasn't a problem since he had contacted an agency that arranged a replacement. The captain, a level 2 martial artist named Lin He, approached Yihe and asked if he was the level 9 martial disciple known as Paisla. The protagonist confirmed. He thought that since he was still a student and lacked authorization to enter a D-class secret realm, he'd had to rely on an illegal agency to forge a fake identity, spending 100,000 credits just on that. Lin He remarked that the name Paisla was peculiar. Yihe stared at him and replied that he had no choice. If he used his real name, he'd have copyright issues. The captain laughed, saying it didn't matter since it was only a code name. What truly mattered was that, as a level 9 disciple, Paisla didn't have enough power for this kind of mission. Therefore, he would only observe and not interfere. Lin He emphasized that he didn't want him getting in the way. The protagonist simply nodded, saying he understood, but thought that defining roles beforehand was a good sign, better than being betrayed midway. With everything settled, the group boarded the vehicle and headed toward the portal. The captain explained that their goal this time was to find the Blood Jade Flower. Once they entered the secret realm, Lin He checked the tracker and reported that there was a flower located in an oasis just ahead, guarded by a rank 2 monster with a general grade lineage. Paisla looked around the barren landscape, reflecting that last time he'd explored a tropical forest, and now he was in the middle of a desert. He concluded that the secret realms weren't connected to a single world. Suddenly, one of the members shouted that Earth Demon rats had found them. Lin He ordered Hood to handle it. Hood drew his knives and with rapid movements hurled them toward the enemies. The blades, infused with martial energy, exploded on impact, wiping out all the rats at once. He turned to the captain and confirmed that the threat had been eliminated. Yeha watched in awe, realizing that Hood infused energy into each throw, making them as lethal as miniature bombs. He also noticed that the man carried himself with a brutal demeanor and spoke only when necessary. The team continued moving forward until they finally reached the indicated area. They disembarked and continued on foot. Paisla asked why they had abandoned the jeep when the path to the oasis was still long. Lin Hei explained that the monsters in this region were extremely sensitive and that the sound of the engine would immediately draw their attention. As they walked, the captain distributed the roles. He instructed that Xiao Xia would throw the flash grenade to lure the beasts. Xiao Wu and Hood would handle the traps. Old Lu would provide suppressive fire, and he himself would stay on the front line. He pointed to Paisla and said he would just observe. The protagonist didn't like the decision, but replied that he understood. With everything in place, Xiao Xia tossed the flash grenade. It released pheromones from high-level creatures, making the monsters nearby think their territory was being invaded. Within seconds, the ground began to shake, and before them appeared a massive creature covered in thick scales, a rank 2 monster known as the Earth Dragon. The captain shouted for Paisla to be careful because the monster was coming. Meanwhile, elsewhere, someone walked across a data projection on the floor, while a strange man nearby watched the scene and began to laugh quietly. The battle against the Earth Dragon ended fairly easily as the captain managed to slash it down quickly. The others ran to him asking if he was all right, and pointing out that the Earth Dragon was dead. Lin He sheathed his sword and said they should keep moving forward. However, a shadow suddenly appeared behind him. The dragon struck again, catching the captain off guard. In an instant, the protagonist leapt forward and used his martial art to attack the beast, unleashing a massive shockwave that startled even the captain. Lin Hei watched in disbelief and said that Paisla was just a novice, yet he had managed to defeat a rank 2 beast. Xia was equally impressed, exclaiming that the punch was incredibly powerful. The entire group surrounded the protagonist, cheering and applauding. Xia said the heavy mountain-splitting fist had destroyed the creature, and Wu, excited, shouted and hugged him, saying the rookie had just slain a rank 2 beast. The captain clapped his hands and thanked him for saving his life, declaring that from now on, they were comrades. Paisla stayed calm and said it was nothing. Lin Hei held something in his hand, called the others over, and confirmed that the Earth Dragon was defeated. Wu pointed out that they had also collected the monster's soul essence, calling it a great prize. Xia, curious, looked at the glowing red orb and asked if that thing was really worth so much. As everyone admired the Earth Dragon's essence, the protagonist stared at it, thinking it looked like a giant fruit that made his mouth water. The captain confirmed its value, explaining that the essence greatly increased compatibility with one's model. He added that this time, it had been close, but they had managed to slay the dragon and find the flower. Suddenly, Hood stabbed the captain from behind and started laughing, saying there was no point in him thinking about that anymore. The others gasped and demanded to know what was happening. Lin He turned around, trying to defend himself, and asked Hood what he thought he was doing. A strange man appeared beside Hood and answered that it was obvious. Hood was just trying to get rich off them. That man was Huo Peng. The protagonist asked if they knew him, and Wu, furious, explained that Peng was infamous for stealing artifacts martial artists found inside dungeons, and now they were being robbed by him. The old man rushed to the wounded captain and held him up while Lin Hei, trembling, said that the blade was poisoned and asked Hood how he could do that, and how he had even known the location of the place, since not even the team had known where the blood jade flower grew until they entered the secret realm. The protagonist stepped forward and said it was all because of the daggers. Hood had clearly hidden information about the weapons he had scattered along the way. Hood laughed and praised Paisla, saying he was sharp and should be in school instead since the entrance exam was coming soon, but added that he had chosen to walk hand in hand with death. Confident, the protagonist cracked his neck and replied that it was true. The exam was close, and he already had the top score waiting for him. Hood lunged at him with a dagger, shouting that he was too arrogant. Paisla easily caught the blade, his eyes burning with anger, and said that the real arrogance was a filthy man barking at him. He released a fierce aura and said all that noise was irritating, that it was time to take out the trash. Peng watched, laughing with excitement, saying the protagonist was fascinating and that he wanted his head. Hood, following his leader's order, charged with incredible speed, but all his strikes were nullified by a single roar from Paisla. The force of the impact sent sand flying across the desert, and Hood used the cover to attempt a sneak attack. He moved silently, trying to strike from above, but the rest of the group shouted that he was coming from overhead. Paisla had already noticed. Concentrating, he prepared his mountain-splitting martial technique, saying this was the perfect chance to test his new skill. With a single strike, the attack pierced straight through his enemy's body. Lin Hei trembled, stunned by what he saw, and exclaimed that Paisla had defeated Hood with just one blow, wondering if he was truly a novice. The protagonist remained calm as if nothing had happened, while Hood's body fell to the ground. Peng shouted, asking if that was a genetic technique, and which great family he came from. Paisla asked what he was talking about and replied mockingly that he was from the Demonra clan, then asked if Peng was about to beg for mercy. That infuriated Peng, who began releasing his power, saying that even if the protagonist had a genetic technique, he couldn't overcome the massive difference in martial strength between them. His body expanded, activating the Black Bear language and unleashing his full power. He charged using the Mountain Fist technique. Confident, Paisla ducked low and said he would start by breaking the bear's legs, striking with immense force and dodging the attack with ease. Peng used his momentum to leap into the air and try to hit him, but just before being struck, Paisla commented that second-class martial artists were indeed strong. His atomic breath hadn't even managed to shatter the man's ankle bone. Peng went for another attack, but the protagonist vanished and reappeared behind him, asking if he was done because now it was his turn. Paisla unleashed his mountain-crushing fist technique, delivering a devastating series of blows to Peng's body and defeating him effortlessly. Everyone in the group stood frozen, stunned by the overwhelming power before them. Lying on the ground, bleeding, Peng gasped that the protagonist's genetic technique released toxic gas and that such a thing was despicable. He said an evil martial artist like him would be cursed and punished. Paisla, eyes bloodshot and consumed by rage, prepared another strike and said the list of people who had cursed him just kept growing, asking who Peng thought he was to say such things. Sometime later in the central gymnasium of Ancheng, a great festival was about to begin. The place was packed, and the students who passed would receive scholarships. The commentator took the stage, greeted everyone, and announced that this year's selection for the martial arts universities was officially open, wishing all participants good luck. He explained that the exams followed a dual format. 2 candidates entered the arena, and whoever won advanced to the next round. The exam lasted 3 days. The first 2 were eliminations, and those who passed would move on to the third phase. Each student had to fight 3 times in the preliminaries, and the winners would continue until the champion was decided. The announcer concluded his speech by saying that they were the future of humanity and should fight not only for themselves, but for the entire human race. They must show their full strength in this exam. Then he officially declared the Ancheng City Martial Arts examination open. Battles in Arenas 1 and 4 began, but the commentator noticed an issue in Arena 6. One of the candidates hadn't shown up. He explained that the competitors for that arena were Xing and Yehe, both from Ancheng's first school. However, only Xing was present, and according to the rules, if the duel began and the other contestant didn't appear, they would be disqualified. Xing said that the humiliation at the genetic conference had been the worst moment of her life, and that she just wanted to use her fire scorpion to teach the protagonist a lesson. But it seemed that coward was too scared to show up. She called it a huge disappointment. The crowd began to murmur, saying it was pathetic, that he didn't even have the courage to appear for the exam. Someone added that he was probably hiding at home crying, and that people like him didn't deserve to be in high school. The referee blew the whistle, announcing that the time was up, and that Yihe of Ancheng's first school was therefore disqualified. Suddenly, a bright light burst across the sky, drawing everyone's attention. People wondered what it was, one remarking that the aura was unbelievably strong, questioning if it was even human, and what kind of power could let someone fly like that. The protagonist descended from the heavens like a meteor, crashing into the center of the arena and unleashing a crushing wave of pressure. Xing froze, confused, until she saw something appear before her. Yehe struck her directly in the face, sending her flying across the stage. He looked down at her and remarked that this time had been close. He almost would have had to wait for next year. Xing lay unconscious on the ground. The commentator announced that Yehe had won the first battle, emerging victorious. The crowd raised their hands, cheering wildly, shouting that he was unbelievably strong since he had defeated his opponent with a single blow and made a spectacular entrance. Excited voices in the stands said it must have been the legendary Heavenly Step technique. The system screen appeared, showing that the host's total attributes had reached 225, and that the monster model Demora, Enraged Demon Emperor, had achieved 20% compatibility. Yihe was thrilled with the result, remembering that Captain Lin He had given him the Blood Jade Flower as thanks for everything he'd done. The fruit had greatly enhanced his body, though it had taken some time to take effect. Now he was fully ready. It was time to sit back and let the show begin. The first matches ended and the second round began. The commentator announced the next duel, Long Tao from Ancheng's fourth school versus Yihe. The fight didn't even last a minute before the protagonist won again. The third school faced him next, but was defeated with a single blow, just like the others. The crowd went wild at his string of victories, exclaiming that he finished each battle with a single kick and moved straight to the next without wasting time. A true human super kick. The commentator raised his hand excitedly and declared that Yehi from the first school had won all 3 fights and advanced to the third stage. When the round ended, the protagonist began walking through the area and many people rushed to him, inviting him to their universities and begging to add him as a friend. Even private universities were after him. Yehi could barely move as people surrounded him from all directions, each calling his name and trying to convince him to enroll in their institution. Then, a woman approached and asked if he already had a university in mind. He looked at her curiously and, apologizing to the others, replied that he intended to attend the capital university. The moment he said that, everyone began to step back, murmuring that he hadn't even reached the finals yet and was already full of himself, saying that once he lost, there would be no point in asking for help. The protagonist was surprised, asking if they were serious and if they truly didn't believe in him. Even so, he said he understood. After all, the capital university was the best martial arts school in the Xia Kingdom, one of the top 5 in the world, the dream of any martial artist. He thought about how, in second-tier cities like Ancheng, only the very best had any chance of getting into such a sacred place. But in the end, martial artists prove their worth through strength. When he wins the tournament, he'll see what everyone has to say then. Suddenly, 2 men in suits approached, calling his name and showing him a document, asking him to cooperate for a reevaluation of his martial level. After the test, both were astonished to confirm that Yihe had become a level 9 martial artist. They remarked that only 15 days earlier, he hadn't been above level 3. Yehei looked at them and asked if they were implying it was impossible to advance that much in such a short time, and if they thought he had cheated. One of the evaluators explained that they had investigated and found he'd been entering dangerous secret realms repeatedly, questioning why he'd done that before the exam. The protagonist acted and replied that he had done it all for training, saying that before his father died, he told him that if he wanted to surpass others, he needed to stop being just a student. So he kept fighting nonstop in secret realms, and during one of those battles, he managed to break through his genetic barrier. The two evaluators froze, sweating, and asked if he truly broke the genetic barrier. Then, they ran off, saying they needed to report it immediately. Yehei watched them go, confused, realizing he had now become a subject of special observation. Later in his room, he saw countless posts from parents, friends, and relatives wishing the candidates good luck, along with live interviews of families supporting their children. He looked up and muttered that apparently no one had come to support him, just an orphan no one cared about. But in truth, on the other side of the screen, his former teacher was watching and silently cheering, hoping he would fulfill everything he had promised. The next day, in the first round of the qualification stage, the protagonist from the first school was set to face Luo Zhuan from the third school. People whispered that they remembered that name. Zhuan had been number 1 in the third year, a level 8 martial artist who had awakened a rare magical beast lineage, and both his parents were martial artists too. They concluded that Yehei was doomed. The protagonist, however, ignored it all and simply asked if they could start already. That irritated Zhuan, who asked if Yehei really didn't know who he was. The protagonist replied that knowing or not didn't change the outcome of the fight. Zhuan laughed and released his power, saying it didn't matter. The result was already decided. He would be the winner. He activated the demonic mark awakening and, with his power amplified, charged forward, saying he hoped Yehei was lucky enough not to die on the spot. He then unleashed the thunder dance technique. Yehei calmly caught the attack with his bare hands, saying it wasn't bad, but still far weaker than that bald guy's strike. Zhuan screamed in pain as his hand burned and fell to his knees in despair. The protagonist raised his hand and struck, slamming him into the arena floor. Then he laughed, asking if there wasn't a single decent opponent in the entire tournament. The commentator announced that Yehei was once again the winner, pointing out that it was another clean hit and that he had just defeated one of the favorites. The crowd erupted, astonished at how easily he had won, commenting that Zhuan had looked so imposing and was suddenly sprawled on the ground. They remarked that Yehei's composure was that of a true master and that his level was far beyond the other competitors. A truly absurd gap. Women in the audience screamed excitedly, saying, "Now that's a real man," and that they wanted to have his children. Even though he had only used his hand this time, the audience joked that it still counted as a single strike. The crowd kept roaring, fascinated by the protagonist's overwhelming display. As Zhuan was carried off on a stretcher, Zhou approached Yehei and said that since he was the chosen one, he'd be the one to take him down in the finals. Meanwhile, in the Capital University's live broadcast room, one of the staff pointed at the screen and shouted for all information on Yehei to be pulled up immediately. In another battle area, the second bracket was on fire, the audience fully engaged as two dazzling twin girls fought. The match was between Kai Xiaoling, known as the queen of Ancheng's second school, and Liu Qingshu, the untouchable flower of the first school. Xiaoling taunted her, saying she couldn't stand her opponent's cold, emotionless face. Qingshu simply stared at her in silence. The referee gave the signal to start, and Xiaoling dashed forward, laughing, and saying she wanted to see if Qingshu would keep that arrogant look once she was lying on the ground. The girl from the first school activated her martial art, the Liu family's secret art, beloved sovereign. The two exchanged swift attacks, dodging and countering each other with precision. Xiaoling intensified her strikes, saying it was time to get serious, and activated her explosive fist technique. She found an opening and attacked without hesitation, but realized too late that she'd fallen into a trap. Her arm was caught by the airwaves Qingshu had created, preventing her retreat. Qingshu seized the moment and used the soul-reaping technique. The commentator was astonished, saying that such a high-level technique shouldn't even be possible for a high school student. He added that with that kind of talent, she wouldn't even need to take the exam. She could get a direct recommendation to a capital university. But at the last second, Xiaoling transformed, unleashing her full power. Her lineage awakened. Shadow Tiger. The commentator exclaimed in disbelief, saying she had managed to awaken a third-grade lineage. The strength of the Shadow Tiger was legendary, and controlling such power was nearly impossible. He said this girl had a brilliant future ahead of her. Xiaoling, in her complete transformation, revealed her lineage, the Phantom Shadow Bird. Qingshu, still calm and cold, simply said it was fine. Xiaoling lunged, mocking and asking if she really thought she could win. Qingshu fought back using her family's secret arts, her movements graceful and precise, almost like a dance. She blocked and dodged every strike with ease. Xiaoling grew more aggressive, activating the tiger's brutal kick technique. Qingshu remained composed, focusing energy into her fingertip, the legendary, primordial Jade Finger. With a single touch, she halted the kick, triggering a massive burst of energy that engulfed the entire arena. The commentator exclaimed that the collision between their powers was absurd, filling the field with thick smoke, and wondered who would still be standing at the end. The audience held their breath, trying to see through the haze. Slowly, the smoke cleared, revealing Xiaoling still standing. The commentator noted that she remained on her feet, but moments later, she collapsed unconscious. Qingshu stood unharmed, her serene expression unchanged. The commentator declared that she was unshaken and emphasized that, with just one martial technique, she had crushed a level 9 opponent with an awakened lineage, something worthy of a prodigy born once in 100 years. He officially announced Qingzhu's victory. The crowd went wild, calling her a monster and praising her overwhelming power. With the matches over, the quarterfinal draw began. The commentator announced that the next to draw would be the protagonist. Yihei reached into the container and pulled out a ball marked with the letter A. A fighter beside him laughed good-naturedly and showed that he had also drawn A, meaning they would face each other. He introduced himself as Shen Jiaguan from Qingfeng Private Academy. Yihei replied, introducing himself as being from Ancheng's first school. Jiaguan pointed toward the arena and said their match would be the second one, so they should watch the first together. The commentator then announced that the first quarterfinal match, Luo Shi from Qingfeng Academy versus Chu Zhou, was about to begin. Jiaguan watched the broadcast closely and remarked that Luo Shi was indeed very strong. Jiaguan had repeated his final year just to try again for admission to Capital University and possessed exceptional control over his lineage. However, before Zhou, he didn't stand a chance. The protagonist asked who this Zhou was, and Jiaguan replied that he also studied at Yihei's school, surprised that he didn't know. While they spoke, the match ended and the commentator announced Zhou's victory. The Qingfeng Academy director watched furiously, unable to accept that his student had lost without even being able to react. Yihei took the opportunity to ask Jiaguan how Luo Shi compared to him. Jiaguan smiled kindly and explained that he was the president of the martial arts club in the third year, adding that even if Luo Shi joined forces with 2 other classmates, he still wouldn't be able to defeat him. Then his expression turned serious as he looked at Yihei and said that he believed the protagonist was his greatest rival in the tournament. He explained that since childhood, he'd had an unusually sharp sense of perception and could feel something powerful inside Yihei, a dormant volcano, a beast about to awaken. Then, smiling again, he said he hoped for a great match, because it was time for the 2 of them to face each other. They walked to the center of the arena, and the commentator announced the start of the second quarterfinal match. Shen Jiaguan from Qingfeng Academy versus Yihei from Ancheng First School. The moment the match began, both exchanged blows so powerful that part of the arena was destroyed. The commentator shouted in excitement, saying both fighters seemed evenly matched. The pressure of the fight was so intense it could be felt by the audience. Suddenly, Jiaguan noticed blood dripping from his nose and asked if that was one of Yihei's lineage abilities. He increased his power, saying that the ability to distort cells directly was truly mysterious. Yihei realized that Jiaguan had formed a martial energy barrier around his body to defend himself against nuclear radiation, which only made him more excited, admitting his opponent was an incredible martial artist, a real monster not to be underestimated. Jiaguan charged, declaring that if that was the case, he'd show him the martial arts passed down for generations through the Shen lineage. He activated his mind and form box technique, Deer Peak. His strikes were fast and precise, so powerful that Yihei couldn't dodge and took the impact head-on. The blow was devastating. The back of Yihei's shirt ripped open. The commentator exclaimed that it was a powerful hit and that Yihei, known as the super kick, had been struck for the first time. The impact made him spit blood, and the announcer emphasized how destructive Jiaguan's mind and form technique truly was. Even wounded, Yihei was merely pushed back, refusing to fall. Jiaguan followed up, saying there was no escape, and used the bear collision technique. This time, Yihei managed to defend with his arms, avoiding a direct blow. As he held the strike, he thought that Jiaguan's attacks weren't purely physical. He was infusing martial energy into his body, doubling the damage. He realized that his previous opponents had been mere amateurs with no experience against real fighters. Suddenly, Jiaguan's arm extended, wrapping around Yihei's torso and pulling him in. Jiaguan said Yihei was half right. He didn't just infuse energy into himself, he could also block his opponent's energy, preventing them from using martial techniques. He then hurled Yihei using monkey throw and followed up with tiger leap, jumping high and slamming him hard, making Yihei feel intense pain. Jiaguan gave him no respite, diving down like an eagle and shouting that Yihei would never win this fight. The blow landed with full force, both crashing into the arena floor in a massive explosion that engulfed everything in smoke. Jiaguan stood up laughing, satisfied, saying that attack had felt amazing. The commentator said the series of attacks had left Yihei no chance to counter, and that the medical team was already preparing to intervene. He explained that the combination of Jiaguan's mind and form techniques would have killed any normal martial artist, and the winner had already been decided. The winner from Qingfeng Academy was... But before he could finish, a deep sound echoed through the arena. Jiaguan turned, startled, as an overwhelming surge of energy spread through the air, making even his voice falter. The smoke slowly cleared, revealing Yihei stepping out of a crater, smiling as he said his opponent was indeed very strong. Then he activated Demora's wild trait, Lineage Awakening. Yihei's body was completely enveloped by his beast's form. Flames and dense energy surrounded him, shaping the figure of Demora, the enraged demon emperor. He looked at his opponent and with a calm and commanding tone, said that if it was any consolation, Jiaguan was the first person to witness that form up close. The commentator, speechless, shouted that it was unbelievable. If high school students could manifest a beast personification, they could be admitted to Capital University without even taking the exam. He excitedly confirmed that it was indeed a magical beast personification and said he'd never expected to see another martial genius in a small city like Ancheng, besides Jingzhou. Faced with that colossal creature, Jiaguan began to panic, barely able to speak. The protagonist walked slowly toward him, and Jiaguan, voice trembling, admitted he never imagined his opponent's awakening would involve such a high-level lineage. Meanwhile, one of the examiners monitoring the fight through his headset suddenly heard strange noises. They all use these devices to track battles precisely. He stood up, in shock, as an alert appeared on his interface. Nuclear radiation levels had reached 9,999,999. The examiner shouted, asking what was happening, stating that the radiation had surpassed all safe limits. The commentator, noticing the evaluator's reactions, announced that after witnessing Yehe's beast personification, they had detected something abnormal and were sealing off the arena with martial energy to contain a possible nuclear leak. The audience was stunned, and people began asking if anyone knew what kind of beast he had awakened. Another student replied that he'd heard Yehe had awakened an unknown beast, but no one believed something that powerful could come from an unregistered species. The protagonist thought that apparently there was no other creature like Demora on Blue Star. That's why no one recognized it. Jiaguan noticed his nose bleeding again and realized his martial shield could no longer block Yehe's overwhelming energy. He concluded he couldn't prolong the fight any longer and decided to risk everything, activating the Golden Star Demon Monkey lineage awakening. The commentator nearly screamed, exclaiming that it was another third-order royal lineage and that this year's entrance exam was full of monstrously strong candidates. Jiaguan used his mind and form box once again, Serpent Strike, moving with lethal precision and speed. The protagonist prepared himself too, focusing his energy and activating the Mountain Prison Fist technique. The impact shook the ground. The strike hit Jiaguan's arm directly and he screamed in pain, realizing the limb had been badly damaged. He admitted that if he hadn't released his power in time, his arm would have been completely shattered. Breathing heavily, he said that earlier he had talked too much, but now he was just getting beaten. Yehe approached him steadily, eyes firm, and said, Jiaguan was an incredible opponent, but the result wouldn't change. The commentator narrated with enthusiasm, explaining that in the second quarterfinal match for Capital University's entrance exam, two high-level lineages were clashing. On one side, a third-order royal lineage. On the other, an unknown magical beast lineage, something rarely seen. Jiaguan tried to analyze the situation but realized that since Yehe's awakening, his power had become immeasurable. He could no longer withstand the pressure and knew that if it continued, he would be crushed. He tried to retreat and counterattack, but Yehe gave him no time. "Don't get distracted," Yehe said, landing a flurry of fast blows. Jiaguan activated mind and form again, grabbed Yehe's arm, spun his body skillfully, and moved behind him, panting as he said the last hit barely scratched him. This was his real move. He jumped high and unleashed the giant elephant paw strike, shaking the entire arena with the impact. But when he stepped back, he froze in disbelief. Yehe stood completely unscathed, arms crossed, watching him calmly. "Are you done?" the protagonist asked, hovering slightly above the ground. "Now it's my turn." He charged forward like a king ready to crush everything before him. But before the blow could land, Jiaguan dropped to his knees, exhausted, shouting that he surrendered. The protagonist stopped, confused, not understanding what had happened, then exploded in frustration. He shouted angrily, saying he'd waited so long for his turn and now the moment was ruined. Taking a deep breath, he calmed down, lowered his hand, and said he'd let it go. He released the built-up energy, returning to his normal form, and remarked that, according to the rules, once an opponent surrenders, the other can't continue the attack. The commentator announced that the match was over, and once again, victory belonged to Yehe. The crowd went wild, shouting about how incredible the protagonist was. Social media exploded. People began making memes of Jiaguan. Before the fight, confident and sure of victory. After the fight, crying and begging forgiveness for not letting Lord Yehe use his full power. Dozens of fan pages started popping up, urging people to join Yehe's fourth fan group via WhatsApp since the first three were already completely full. Others shared links on the Toker platform, telling everyone to follow them to watch the full video of Yehe's entrance exam battle. The public was ecstatic. Fans commented that the best student and candidate of the year was undoubtedly the protagonist, claiming that not even Qingju or Zhou could stand against him. Meanwhile, the director of Qingfeng Private Academy was livid, shouting that Luo Shi might have lost, but he had placed all his faith in Jiaguan. As soon as the fight ended, the director stormed into the arena, yelling at Jiaguan, demanding how he dared to admit defeat, and if he had any idea how much money had been invested in his training up to that point. Furious, the director said that if Jiaguan didn't repay every cent of debt, he shouldn't even dream of entering university. Jiaguan calmly placed a hand on the director's shoulder, startling him. The man stammered, asking what he was trying to do. Jiaguan looked him straight in the eyes and said the director wouldn't be able to withstand that punch. That surrendering had been the best choice to avoid destroying his own body. He asked if the director had the guts to step into the ring and take that blow himself. Then he added that, out of gratitude for the school's kindness, he would repay the debt little by little in the future, but warned him never to threaten a warrior stronger than himself. The director began trembling and, with no words left, admitted that Jiaguan was right. The commentator returned to the broadcast, announcing that after a fierce set of battles, the 4 best candidates in this year's entrance exam had been decided: Yihe, Qingju, Zhou, and some other random nobody. He also emphasized that Ancheng's first school was the clear overall winner, claiming 3 out of the 4 semifinal spots. At that moment, the first school's director was beaming with pride, laughing and saying that old Lu had worked at the school for so many years, and now it was time for him to be promoted. Overjoyed, Lu cheered at the top of his lungs, shouting about how incredible his student Yihe was. The commentator announced that the semifinal draw would begin right then. The protagonist stepped forward, picked his ball again, and realized he would be the first to fight. Qingju showed hers. It was the same. The commentator revealed that the first match of the college entrance semifinals would be an internal battle between 2 students of Ancheng's #1 school, Yehe and Qingju. The audience erupted in excitement, shouting that they had been waiting for this fight, certain it would be one of the best in the entire tournament. However, many believed Qingju had the upper hand, as she had mastered 2 royal martial arts of mysterious origin. With those alone, she had defeated Xiaoling, who possessed a 3rd-rank royal lineage. Qingju's own awakened lineage, the 4th-rank infernal bird, had not yet been fully revealed. On the other hand, Jieguan had also possessed a 3rd-rank lineage and had been the one to force the protagonist to awaken his own, an extremely powerful one. It was estimated that Yihe's lineage was also of the 4th rank, though still incomparable to that of the goddess Liu, who not only held a lineage of equal level, but also mastered exquisite martial techniques. Finally, both proceeded to the semifinals arena. They stepped into the center while the referee called for silence. As soon as they were ready, he signaled for the fight to begin. Instantly, Yihe released his aura, unleashing overwhelming pressure within the arena and raising a dense mist that obscured everything. Staring at that sight, Qingju sensed the depth of his power but didn't waver, saying she hoped he was strong enough to withstand her. The commentator narrated that the battle had begun with Yihe releasing a thick fog that completely blocked visibility, leaving the audience unable to see what was happening inside. He wondered how Qingju would handle the boy who had shocked everyone during the year's entrance exams, and whether she would be forced to unleash her true power again. Within the smoke, Yihe analyzed the situation. Qingju's martial arts were far superior to his. With such mystical techniques, even his strength might not be enough to inflict any real damage. He also acknowledged her intelligence, her ability to formulate multiple strategies mid-fight. He understood that if the battle dragged on, she would gain the advantage. Therefore, he decided to go all out from the very beginning. Suddenly, he burst through the mist, charging with the mountain fist. Qingju saw him and wondered why he was attacking so recklessly already, but quickly concluded that if that was how he wanted it, she would use her royal martial arts to defend and strike back. Mid-charge, Yihe abruptly changed his stance and struck her cleanly. Shocked, she grew irritated, realizing he had tricked her. He'd shouted, "Mountain fist!" but his attack had been a whip of pure energy instead. Taking advantage of her confusion, Yihe intensified his beastly aura and kept her under relentless pressure. The crowd began to complain, saying the protagonist was just toying around and that real warriors fought with honor. Ignoring them, Yihe maintained his aggressive tempo, giving Qingju no time to catch her breath. Still, she managed to channel her energy and broke his barrage, drawing cheers from the audience, who believed she might finally turn the fight around. But Yihe unleashed the hands of his beast and declared she wouldn't escape so easily. He launched another strike that caught her off guard. She realized he was using martial energy as well. Qingju jumped back and countered, causing a large explosion, but it wasn't enough. Within seconds, Yihe appeared in front of her, commanding her to stop running. He attacked again, blow after blow, with terrifying speed and power. Qingju gritted her teeth, wondering how he wasn't exhausted after so many strikes. His stamina was absurd. Then she remembered her 2 imperial secret martial arts. One defensive, the loyal family's secret art, Floating Shadow, and the other offensive, the Hunyuan Jade Finger. She believed that if she could use both, she might have a chance to break free. Yet his pressure was overwhelming. There was no opening at all. Knowing she couldn't hold back any longer, Qingju activated her trump card, the awakening of the Netherbird lineage. Her body transformed before everyone's eyes as great black wings unfolded from her back and she rose into the air. The commentator shouted with excitement that her lineage had finally awakened, the first manifestation of her magical beast, the Netherbird. With a serious expression, Qingju warned Yihe to be careful, saying she still couldn't control her strength in that form. But Yihe only laughed, thrilled, saying that was perfect. Until now, he'd been using only half his power, so there was no need to hold back anymore. Qingju darted around the arena at high speed, but Yihe sensed her reappearing behind him. Without hesitation, she unleashed the imperial secret technique, Hunyuan Jade Finger. In the midst of the furious clash, Yihe grinned wildly and activated his atomic fist. The collision between their attacks generated a colossal surge of energy that filled the entire arena. The audience groaned, many feeling dizzy, complaining that the pressure was so immense it was hard to breathe or even keep their eyes open. Qingju was forced back several steps and, upon looking ahead, was stunned. Yihe's energy was overflowing, his body radiating the aura of a raging beast. The commentator reminded everyone that this was just the first semi-final match, yet the protagonist's unleashed power was already shaking the entire field, the roaring energy deafening. Qingju stared in disbelief, her voice trembling as she muttered that this level of energy couldn't be good. The commentator, equally shaken, tried to make sense of it, explaining that Yihe's beast form seemed to be absorbing energy instead of losing it. He described how the spines along Yihe's back were storing vast amounts of energy and converting it through his mouth. Then, in a flash, Yihe fired the atomic energy beam straight at her. Qingzhu tried to shield herself with her wings, but even with her latent awakening, she could tell the blast was far stronger than expected. She immediately used the feather deflection technique. The commentator cried out in panic. The energy beam had been reflected by Qingzhu's feathers and was now hurtling toward the audience. Chaos broke out in the stands, but before disaster struck, a barrier of energy materialized, blocking the scattered blasts. It had been conjured by the city's mayor, Huang Qing. He raised his voice, calling for everyone's attention and declaring that the strongest champion in Anqing's history would be born that day. The crowd erupted, cheering as the commentator praised the mayor for protecting them. Inside the arena, however, blood began dripping to the floor. Qingzhu was gravely injured, her wings torn to shreds. Trembling, she faced the protagonist and admitted in a weak voice that he had shattered her bird's defense with a single strike. Shaken, she began doubting herself, wondering if she could still defeat him. At that moment, her mind drifted back to childhood memories, voices telling her she was the Liu family's hope, that she must never lose. She remembered that her ancestors watched over her, and that disappointing them would be unforgivable. She thought of her mother, who had dedicated her life to training her so she could one day restore the Liu family's honor. For that reason, she felt she had to win, no matter the cost. In her mind, she saw herself as a frightened child, her mother kneeling beside her saying she must win not only that tournament but also in life itself. The pressure was suffocating. Qingzhu could barely breathe. Back in reality, she looked at Yihe, realizing how exhausted she was. She acknowledged his strength and, confused, smiled faintly, wondering if it was normal to feel okay with not being able to surpass someone so strong. Even so, she rushed forward again, asking him to look at the opening she was leaving and finish her off once and for all. But Yihe didn't move. He let her hit him directly as if it were nothing. Shocked, she asked why he hadn't dodged. With a cold, steady gaze, he asked if she had already lost her fighting spirit. Qingzhu froze at his words. Irritated, Yihe said she couldn't even meet his eyes, and, enraged, gathered a massive surge of energy, shouting that he would claim that damn title fair and square. Stunned, Qingzhu couldn't react as he struck again, slamming her to the ground. The protagonist stared down at her, demanding that she start taking it seriously. Then he charged forward at a high speed, asking if she still couldn't react and ordering her to move faster. Beaten down, Qingzhu screamed in indignation, yelling that he was too audacious to hit her like that. No one had ever dared do so to her since she was a child. Confused by everything that was happening, Qingzhu shouted that she wanted him to win too, and demanded to know why he insisted so much that she keep fighting. Suddenly, a colossal force surged through her body, and she roared that he had no right to hit a woman in the face like that. Yihe looked at her firmly and replied that this was exactly how he liked it. If she didn't want to be hit, then she should get up and fight. Qingzhu then activated the forbidden martial art blood combustion. New, immense wings unfolded behind her, shimmering with fiery brilliance, and her entire outfit transformed, reflecting the true form of her magical beast. Staring at the protagonist, she declared that she would now fight with all her strength and defeat him, just as he seemed to want. Yihe watched her transformation and burst into manic laughter, saying that she had finally revealed the true form of her beast. Now, things were finally getting interesting. He too transformed completely, declaring that if that was the case, he could no longer hold back. When his transformation was complete, his power flared violently as he activated the Qi Gong technique, a fusion of the Demora model with his internal energy flow, the nuclear combat body. The protagonist stepped forward and said he hoped they would have a good fight. Qingzhu glared back and unleashed her ability Razor Hurricane. Yet Yihe charged straight in without hesitation, plunging directly into the storm and activating Explosive Fist. At that same moment, Qingzhu gathered energy in her mouth and unleashed a devastating roar, the Atomic Breath. Their powers collided violently, sending shockwaves through the arena. This time, the protagonist was thrown back, though the blast wasn't strong enough to injure him. He smirked and asked if she thought she was the only one who could roar. He then focused energy into the spikes on his back. Qingzhu recognized the movement. It was the same attack as before, but she didn't intend to retreat this time. Closing her eyes briefly, she concentrated, opening small gaps in her defense to execute the Liu family's most powerful technique. Gathering every bit of energy she could, she shouted that now they would fight as equals. Yihe fired the atomic laser, while Qingzhu activated her lineage skill, the infernal blood spikes. The two attacks collided at the center of the arena. Seeing what was about to happen, the commentator warned that both attacks were extremely powerful and would create a catastrophic explosion. Neither of them would be able to control the outcome. Once again, the mayor intervened. Using his genetic technique, he conjured a massive wall called the Divine Energy Wall. The attack struck it, obliterating it instantly and sending a massive shockwave rippling through the entire arena. The crowd was in disbelief, wondering if that wall had truly been conjured by the mayor and if he had actually managed to contain the explosion. If he hadn't, everyone would have been doomed. Watching silently, the mayor thought to himself that the 3 divine walls he had erected were improvised and not as solid as they should have been. In the end, the 2 attacks had neutralized each other. He couldn't believe 2 candidates of such monstrous power existed in the same entrance exam. As the smoke slowly cleared, one of the figures appeared, her arm dripping with blood. Qingzhu was on her knees, her left arm badly injured. Struggling to breathe, she admitted that her true form's power had reached its limit, but she still insisted she could fight. From within the smoke, the protagonist emerged slowly, standing before her completely unharmed. Qingzhu looked at him in disbelief, unable to understand how her attacks had hit but done nothing. He told her that if she didn't purge the nuclear radiation within her body, she could suffer permanent damage and even lose the ability to fight in the future. Trembling, she began to cry, shouting that she wanted to fight him up to that point and asking why he had pushed her so hard to continue. Yihe crouched down in front of her, looked into her eyes, and asked whether she truly hadn't wanted to fight him, or if she was just being stubborn, refusing to admit her own competitive spirit. He told her that while she fought with everything she had, he could feel her desire to win, something he deeply admired in her. His words left her speechless. Qingzhu reflected and realized he was right. She truly had wanted to defeat him. That was why she had abandoned her defense and gone all out. The realization confused her. She had always hated fighting and just wanted to be done with it. Yet during this battle, she felt something different. The thrill of fighting not for others, but for herself. Yihe placed a hand on her shoulder, making her blush slightly. Then he began drawing out the radiation from her arm, healing her wounds instantly. He said she had been too distracted during the fight, and that was why she lost. Qingzhu looked at her arm, astonished. Both the radiation and her injuries were gone. The protagonist smiled, saying that despite everything, she was still the strongest opponent he had ever faced, and next time, he wanted a pure, unrestricted fight with her. Qingzhu looked at him with admiration, her eyes shining. For the first time, someone was seeing the person behind her power. As the smoke fully cleared, the commentator's voice echoed through the arena, announcing that Yihe was still standing at the center. The protagonist released her arm and smiled as the commentator declared the end of the first semifinal match, announcing that the representative of Ancheng's first school had claimed another victory. He then added that following Yihe's triumph, Zhou had also emerged victorious. As expected, now the greatest climax of the Ancheng entrance exam was about to begin, the final battle for the highest score between Yihe and Zhou. Viewership skyrocketed as the commentator shouted that the showdown was about to start. Zhou drew his sword and began to speak, but Yihe interrupted with the same confident smile as before, challenging him to come at him with everything he had. Zhou didn't hesitate. He dashed forward, activating the 7 stellar steps technique. His speed was astonishing, while the protagonist remained still, gathering his energy. Then Yihe struck the ground with atomic burst, sending shockwaves across the entire arena. Zhou retreated, realizing that Yihe had been too lazy to look for his real body, and instead unleashed a massive attack that hit all of his clones at once. Even with his defensive ability, he knew he couldn't face that kind of power head-on. No warrior his age could. What he was witnessing was a true anomaly. Zhou took a deep breath and changed tactics. If he couldn't fight directly, he would wear him down from a distance. He then awakened his elemental ice dragon lineage and activated freezing pulse. The audience screamed in awe as the entire arena filled with ice. The attack engulfed Yihe, trapping him inside a gigantic block of frozen crystal. Many shouted, believing that Zhou had actually defeated the great demon Yihe. The commentator cried that the freezing pulse was so powerful, it had created a real iceberg, freezing the protagonist solid. But after the attack, Zhou felt the toll on his body. Channeling that much icy energy had drained him completely. Suddenly, the commentator urged everyone to look. The ice was melting. A ray of radiation sliced through the frozen wall, shooting straight toward Zhou, who froze in shock, unable to believe it. The protagonist shattered the ice prison effortlessly. Zhou tried to react, raising a wall of ice to defend himself, but the impact destroyed everything, though he barely managed to survive. Yihe stepped calmly from the wreckage, saying that Zhou's dragon of ice had never worked and never would. Apparently, he was the perfect counter to anything cold. Taking a deep breath, he said the gap between their strengths was immeasurable. Enraged, Zhou shouted for Yihe to take his final attack. His ultimate technique, originally meant for Qingzhu. Gathering the last of his power, he formed a colossal sword of pure ice, the soul-annihilating sword intent. The mayor watched in astonishment, recognizing the technique and wondering how someone so young could wield such power. Zhou poured his entire soul into the strike and lunged, slashing at the protagonist. Blood splattered, but all he managed was a small scratch on Yihe's hand. The protagonist smirked, saying that when Zhou had a better sword, maybe he'd have a slim chance at victory. Desperate, Zhou watched his weapon shatter completely. Out of options, he looked at the protagonist and asked what his odds of winning truly were. Yihe laughed and replied that they were probably a little better than becoming successful livestock. Zhou finally understood the vast difference between them. Drained, he returned to normal, raised his hand, and surrendered. The commentator shouted with overwhelming excitement that the winner of Ancheng's college entrance final was Yihe. The crowd exploded into cheers, once again hailing the protagonist as an absolute legend. They said everyone had been right from the very beginning. Even though Zhou was incredibly strong, he was nowhere near Yihe's level. The match was being broadcast throughout the city, and the comments spread like wildfire. Many viewers said they'd heard that, just a year ago, Yihe had ranked near the very bottom of his class, but now he stood at the very top, a true symbol of inspiration. Moreover, this year's entrance examination had been on an entirely different level, far surpassing any before it. Because Yihe had won so decisively, he was now being recognized as the strongest champion in the history of the exam. someone no one could ever surpass. The crowd chanted his name over and over as the commentator climbed up to the stage, his voice booming through the speakers for everyone watching the 24th annual city examination. After 3 days of intense battles, he declared, the #1 student had finally appeared. Slightly embarrassed, Yihei gave a faint smile, feeling that he had finally achieved his goal. The commentator brought the microphone closer and remarked that he'd heard Yihei's strength came from a long journey of struggle and perseverance. Now that he had reached the top, perhaps he had something to say. Yihei thought to himself that the commentator was clever, turning a simple question into a subtle trap. But he spoke anyway. He said that above all, he wanted to thank his teacher, the one who never gave up on him, even in his darkest moments. It was his teacher who had encouraged him when he had fallen to his lowest point, and thanks to that, he had discovered his true fighting spirit. On the other side of the broadcast, the teacher was watching, tears streaming down his face as he held onto the television, muttering that he didn't deserve such gratitude, calling himself a mediocre instructor who had failed to recognize the boy's potential from the start. Meanwhile, the school director waved at Yihei from the audience, making hand gestures indicating a 2 million reward, but quickly changed his mind and raised it to 10 million, asking Yihei to promote the school during his speech. Seizing the opportunity, Yihei thanked both the institution and the director, saying that without their guidance, he wouldn't have reached this point. Then, gripping the microphone firmly, he raised his hand and shouted that, above all, the most important person to thank was himself, because without his own effort and determination, he would never have come this far. Suddenly, the system appeared before him, congratulating him for earning the title of #1 student. As a reward, he would receive a random model ability. Surprised, Yihei realized that the system had a reward mechanism and grew eager to discover what his new ability would be. After the interview, as he walked through the arena corridors, voices echoed all around. He's finally out! Dozens of people rushed toward him, trying to get another interview, bombarding him with questions about the university, the difficulties of the tournament, and his personal impressions. The protagonist ran to escape, begging them to stop following him, but one reporter caught up and asked an inappropriate question, making him run even faster, saying he didn't have time for that nonsense. After a long chase, Yihei finally reached the basketball gym, panting but relieved to have shaken off the crowd. What truly made him happy, however, was the realization that he wasn't limited to a single combat model. He could gain more abilities through the system. At that moment, a figure appeared beside him, congratulating him on his victory and for achieving first place. Startled, Yihei thought it was another reporter, but the man removed his hat and told him not to be mistaken. He wasn't a journalist, but someone from Huadu. The stranger looked him straight in the eyes and said it was time to discuss the matter of his genetic trait. Tension filled Yihei's chest. He thought there couldn't possibly be any problem with his trait since all his abilities so far had come from his monster model. Still, he wondered if this man somehow knew about his powers, and who exactly he was. The man then asked if Yihei had ever talked with his father about the genetic trait. The protagonist nodded, recalling the inherited memories of the body he now inhabited. Yes, that conversation had indeed taken place. The visitor pulled a folder from his bag and asked if Yihei had never wondered how his father, just a simple taxi driver, could possibly know about something so complex and unrelated to his profession. A sense of unease washed over Yihei as questions began racing through his mind. The man opened an envelope and explained that Yihei's case was special. Because of that, Huadu had decided to make an exception, allowing him to see a confidential document. Driven by curiosity, Yihei took it, sensing that what he was about to read would change his life forever. Inside the envelope, the title read, Prometheus Research Institute. It was a prestigious organization in the field of genetic biology on the Blue Star, but one that had been banned in many countries after a mysterious incident. Most of its leading scientists had disappeared, living under false identities scattered across the world. According to the file, the central project of Prometheus had been the study of genetic traits. As he read, Yihei began to piece things together. It seemed these people believed that his father had been one of the Institute's key researchers, and that he himself might have been one of his father's experiments. The man in front of him told him not to worry. The nation wouldn't take any action against him. He was only there to inform him of the truth, as someone directly involved deserved to know. Yihei silently wondered if the man would be offended, if he said he wasn't even remotely concerned. The visitor went on, saying that Yihei had been an essential part of the project and that was why they wished to protect him. Feeling a mix of pride and irony, Yihei replied that it might be troublesome for them since famous people tend to attract problems and attention, but society adapts quickly to that sort of thing. The man simply smiled and said he would take his leave for now. Once he was gone, Yihei sighed with relief, happy to finally be alone again. He had earned a generous reward from the entrance exam, a scholarship worth $2 million from the director, an additional $800,000 bonus, and a guaranteed spot at Huadu University. But what truly excited him was the chance to gain a new model ability. Eager, he opened the system's interface and began the draw, unable to contain his curiosity. Suddenly, a surge of violet energy enveloped him, spinning rapidly into a swirling vortex. He watched in awe as a glowing card was chosen, revealing a colossal titan. The system's voice echoed, Model acquired, Supergiant Humanoid, Blood ability, Gigantification, 60 meters. Steam ability, Mega attack, Evolution. Path, Immutable Humanoid. Compatibility, 1%. Yihei frowned in disappointment. He hadn't expected to receive a supergiant humanoid, but then an idea sparked in his mind. If he could possess more than one model, what if he combined the supergiant humanoid with the Demora model? The result could make him the true king of monsters. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man answered a call. The person on the other end asked if he was turning down missions for personal reasons. The man confirmed, instructing them to cancel everything. As he hung up, the camera panned to a deep hole in the table, a mark he always left when he lost control. He thought about the report he just received regarding his younger brother. It stated that the body hadn't been found in the secret realm, only residual traces marking his last known location. Tests detected faint levels of nuclear radiation. He turned his gaze toward the television, where Yihe's battles were being broadcast. Closing his eyes, he muttered that he had warned his brother to stay out of society, but he hadn't listened. He remembered their mother's dying wish to take care of his little brother. As the news anchor announced that Yihe had won the city's final exam, the man stepped closer to the screen, trembling with laughter, saying that the boy must be a genius, that Hwadu University would surely try to recruit him. But then his tone shifted, turning cold. "What a pity," he said. "They would never allow that to happen." Meanwhile, back at Yihe's apartment, the delivery man called out saying a package had arrived. Yihe picked up the envelope, annoyed. He had been about to leave for the secret realm when the message came. Opening the letter, he read, "Yihe, according to the Hwadu Central Research Department's investigation, a new secret realm rift will open at Red Tree Mountain in Ancheng City at 1500 hours. Estimated rank, C or nearby. Would you like to investigate it with me? Signed, Joe." Yihe blinked in disbelief, wondering if Joe lived in the Stone Age, who even sent letters anymore. He began to suspect that his friend might also have experienced some kind of time regression. Not long after, at Red Tree Mountain, a massive crowd had already gathered. Yihe watched, amazed by the number of people, at least 100. Still, it was expected. A new secret realm rift always drew attention. Suddenly, Joe appeared, smiling warmly, and Yihe returned the greeting with a grin of his own. Joe looked at the protagonist and commented that he seemed even stronger than before. Yihe laughed a little embarrassed, thinking that he hadn't expected Joe to notice. After all, he had spent the prize money from the entrance exam on specialized supplements to increase his compatibility with the supergiant humanoid model to 35%. Lower-level monster models also had certain advantages and could yield faster results. Trying to change the subject, Yihe asked which university his friend planned to attend. Joe replied that he was considering enrolling at Hwadu University. Yihe was surprised and said that it seemed they'd be classmates once again. However, he soon noticed something odd in Joe's expression. At that moment, shouts echoed across the clearing. The rift was opening. As the tear in space began to widen, a monstrous creature crawled out from within. The warriors nearby tensed, and one shouted that the passage had finally been opened, ordering everyone to attack and defeat the beast so they could enter the secret realm rift. The fighters rushed forward, weapons blazing, and Yihe quickly realized how dangerous it was to stay exposed outside. He warned Joe that it was too risky. They needed to move. After slaying the beast that guarded the entrance, the group managed to pass through the portal and entered the secret realm of Red Tree Mountain. Inside, Yihe and Joe followed the band of warriors until the protagonist caught a metallic scent in the air. Blood. Suddenly, someone shouted that a whole army of beasts was waiting for them. Chaos erupted as an intense battle broke out. Warriors charged forward, cutting down monsters left and right. Joe joined the fight, activating his bloodline ability and freezing several creatures around him before shattering them to pieces. But then, one beast lunged at him from behind. Before he could react, an atomic explosion struck it, obliterating it instantly. Yihe warned him to watch his back, and Joe thanked him for saving his life. The protagonist sighed and muttered that fighting such weak monsters was hardly worth the effort. Joe turned around, only to see that Yihe had already wiped out every creature nearby. Stunned, he asked if the protagonist had really taken down all those beasts alone. Looking around at the dissolving carcasses, Joe realized Yihe had unleashed a wide-range nuclear radiation attack, a devastating technique that destroyed internal cells from within. Yihe continued eradicating the monsters like they were mere insects. The other warriors stared in disbelief, wondering how the battle had ended so quickly, and asking if there was a high-ranking fighter among them. One of them said no, it wasn't that. It was that the top student of the city's entrance exam was there. Another, confused, said he thought the winner was a martial artist, not someone who could wipe out so many enemies at once. The first snapped irritably, asking if he hadn't seen the broadcast. The man admitted he hadn't. He didn't waste time watching students fight. The other exploded, shouting that the protagonist could probably take on 10 of him at once. Witnessing that power, the group quickly decided to cooperate. Several warriors surrounded Yihe, and the leader commanded everyone to lure monsters toward him. Not long after, shouts rose from the front lines, a signal flare marking that the beast leader had been defeated. The crowd erupted in celebration as the remaining creatures began to retreat. Joe, exhausted, sighed that at least they had survived the first wave. Even so, out of 1,000 initial fighters, only 800 remained, many injured. Then Yihe appeared, carrying an absurd pile of monster cores, asking Joe if there was any way to store them all. Joe, shocked, asked how he'd gathered so many so quickly, but gave up trying to understand. He showed a small ring, explaining that it could store items in a subspace. Yihe's eyes widened in admiration. It was a hyperspatial ring, worth a fortune. He never imagined Joe owned something so rare. At that moment, other warriors shouted excitedly that leader Wu Sen and his team had returned. The crowd cheered, relieved, as the reinforcements arrived. They were the ones assigned to handle higher-level monsters before the rest were overwhelmed. Wu Sen strode through the crowd straight toward Yihe. When he got close, he confirmed that this was indeed the city's top entrance exam student. Introducing himself, he said his name was Wu Sen, leader of Ancheng's Silver Wolf Martial Group. Extending his hand, he explained that he had heard of Yihe's extraordinary performance during the exams and wished to invite him to join the group. If Yihe accepted, he would gain educational privileges and major opportunities for advancement. Wu Sen was even willing to offer an S-rank contract. Gasps rippled through the surrounding warriors. Wu Sen rarely recruited anyone personally, and an S-rank contract was almost unheard of. They murmured among themselves that without a martial group's backing, advancing in the profession was nearly impossible, and the Silver Wolf Group was the most prestigious in the entire Xia Kingdom. Even Huadu University students seldom received S-rank offers. Then, a woman arrived riding a massive tiger, her expression amused. She said now she understood why Wu Sen had rushed over. He was trying to grab the gold first. Looking directly at Yihe, she extended an invitation of her own, Nintetsus, to join the Chengda Martial Group. Though smaller than the Silver Wolves, she offered him 15% of the group's monthly resource share, an unheard of amount. The crowd buzzed in shock. Never before had two group leaders offered such generous terms to a single student. Yihe thanked them politely but declined, saying he wasn't interested in joining any group for the moment. Wu Sen laughed and shook his hand, saying he had expected that answer. Recruiting the top exam student was never going to be easy. He added that it was fine. They could stay friends, and if Yihe ever changed his mind, he'd be welcome anytime. The woman agreed, saying the doors of Chengda would also remain open should he ever reconsider. Yihe replied that he wasn't thinking about it now, but that they could all remain on friendly terms. Zhou, watching all this, whispered if the protagonist had just used the same hand he'd shaken theirs with to pick his ear. Yihe answered that no one needed to know. Zhou sighed and quickly changed the topic, saying the first wave was over and they had held up well. He suggested that now they should start exploring. The forest was huge and it might be better to reach a higher point to assess the area and form a plan. They took flight, Zhou astonished at Yihe's speed. When they reached the mountain peak, they surveyed the vast landscape below. Zhou's eyes widened. "What are those?" he asked. Ahead, colossal beasts towered into the sky, each over 100 meters tall. He said he never imagined he'd see creatures that size so close. Yihe, as always, was thrilled, saying he had expected something like this. Though they were still newcomers, in a few years they would be able to face monsters of that scale and explore lands like this without worry. Zhou shuddered at his words. Just imagining fighting something like that made his spine go cold. Yet Yihe's grin was wild, almost exhilarated by the danger. Still, that fearless confidence inspired him. The protagonist grew even more excited, shouting that soon he would claim every one of those monsters' cores for himself. Wanting to study the area more closely, Yihe activated his detection ability and noticed something strange. Through his magnetic field, he could sense life all around, except to the southeast, where there was a dead zone, completely devoid of life. That sparked his curiosity. After all, where there's silence, there's mystery. And the bigger the wave, the bigger the prey. Excited, he pointed forward, saying there was a lake in that direction and proposed they investigate. When they arrived, Yihe's eyes lit up even more. There stood Yuli, smiling and greeting him warmly, saying she was finally meeting the top student of the entrance exam and admitting she hadn't expected him to be so strong in person. Zhou stared wide-eyed, astonished that Yuli personally knew the boy who had taken first place. Another woman, equally surprised, urged her to introduce him right away, gushing that his fight against the beasts earlier had been incredible. The protagonist stepped closer, asking how long they had been there. Yuli smiled and said they had just arrived. Two of her teammates had gone underwater to explore. Suddenly, a man burst out of the lake, shouting with excitement that they were going to be rich. Yuli hurried to ask what he meant, and the man, still grinning, explained that there was a relic at the bottom of the lake. If they could retrieve it, they'd all become wealthy. Her eyes sparkled as she asked if he was serious. If true, it was an astonishing find. Curious, Yihe asked what kind of relic it was and why they were so thrilled. Zhou explained that within secret realms, ancient structures were often discovered, believed to have been built by the native civilizations of the sacred realm, and that such ruins often contained priceless relics. He added that much of modern martial society and even current technologies were derived from these discoveries. At that moment, Yu Yang, irritated by their voices, turned sharply, demanding to know who else was there. Sword in hand, he shouted at them to identify themselves and accused them of following his team. Yuli quickly intervened, asking him to calm down, explaining that the two newcomers were Yihe and Zhou, first and second place in the city's entrance exam, both far stronger than most common warriors. She said they'd be joining the group temporarily. Yihe confirmed with a nod, saying they were only there to help explore. Yu Yang narrowed his eyes and asked how the rewards would be divided. Yihe replied that it wasn't a problem. They'd split things according to contribution. Whoever helped more would earn more. Still annoyed, Yu Yang stepped back, muttering that he'd accept it for now, but that it didn't make them friends. As he walked away, he thought about how these two top-ranked students would probably become great warriors someday. Better to avoid conflict and go along with it for now. With everything settled, the group dove into the lake to begin their exploration. Deep underwater, they discovered a cave. Yu Yang told them that after that passage, they would reach the ruins. But as they continued, he began glancing around uneasily. Li Wei wasn't there. He had specifically ordered him to wait at that very spot. A tattooed man suggested maybe Li Wei had found treasure and gone off on his own. Yu Yang pulled out his communicator and tried calling, but there was no response. The group asked if they had seen any trace of monsters or danger earlier. He said no. They had seen nothing and even set traps all around the perimeter, yet none had been triggered. The girl with glasses began trembling, saying this place was far too dangerous, especially with Li Wei missing, and asked if they really should continue. Yu Yang snapped angrily that of course they should. They couldn't waste such an opportunity. If she was scared, she could leave, but if she wanted to get rich, she'd better help. Everyone fell silent watching him. He took the lead again, declaring that since they had decided to stay, they should move forward immediately. The group followed a narrow path, guided by faint footprints on the ground. Yihe frowned and whispered to Zhou that something felt wrong. Zhou agreed, pointing out that the timing didn't make sense. Yuli had said they'd arrived only 10 minutes earlier, yet Yu Yang and Li Wei had somehow found a cave, explored it completely, and located ruins. It sounded like someone cheating with a game map. Concerned, Zhou suggested they turn back, but it was already too late. A glint of anticipation flashed in Yihe's eyes. He was hungry for a fight, and he told Zhou to relax, that he had a plan. After a few more minutes of walking, they reached a wide chamber. Thick roots hung down from the ceiling, their surfaces crawling with a faint luminescence. The group looked up and realized that several monster cores were tangled among the roots, long since dimmed after absorbing their energy. They now understood why no beasts had appeared earlier. They had all been devoured. Yuli asked Yu Yang where the relic he'd mentioned was. The girl with glasses began shaking uncontrollably, her voice trembling as she pointed upward, saying that was Li Wei. His body hung lifeless, completely consumed by the parasitic roots. The two women screamed in horror. Yu Yang fell to his knees, trembling, shouting in disbelief. Where was the relic? Why wasn't anything there? Where had it gone? He kept shouting that nothing made sense, clutching his head as veins bulged beneath his skin. Something was wrong, and his skull began to swell, and he cried out that they had to leave immediately. Suddenly, roots burst from his head. The monster had possessed him, but Yihe reacted instantly, obliterating him with a single atomic blast. The protagonist muttered that he hadn't expected to find such an intelligent creature here. Looking up, he realized they had walked straight into its trap. In an instant, the roots sealed off the entrance, trapping everyone inside. Zhou's eyes widened as he recalled something from an old book. If he remembered correctly, this creature was called the Demonic Branch Phantom, a high-level monster. Yuli trembled, saying that such creatures were not like ordinary beasts. With their current power, they didn't stand a chance. Yihe's eyes gleamed coldly as he released his aura and declared that no matter what level it was, he'd crush it all the same. Suddenly, the blocked passage exploded open, and from the smoke emerged a man radiating immense power. He called out Yihe's name, saying he had come only to kill him. The entire group froze. The energy emanating from him was clearly that of a superior level warrior. The protagonist turned, his expression darkening, tired of constantly being targeted. The man glared at him, saying he had heard rumors of someone using nuclear radiation within the Red Tree Mountain's secret realm, and he knew it could only be Yihe. He explained that he had tracked the protagonist by the radiation trail left behind, following him silently to avoid detection, stopping his heartbeat, suppressing his breath, erasing every trace of life. But even then, Yihe had found him and sealed the cave. That, he said, proved Yihe's strength was great enough to have killed his brother from the Huo family. Yihe, confused, asked who this guy even was, saying he'd just appeared out of nowhere talking nonsense. Did they even know each other? Enraged, the warrior shouted for him to stop pretending and go straight to hell, charging forward. But as he leapt, the roots reached for him, and the moment they touched, he realized this was the nest of the demonic branch phantom. Yihe had deliberately lured him here. Furious, he demanded to know the protagonist's plan, hacking through the roots with rapid strikes, but soon noticed that the creature absorbed life energy and released toxins that weakened his body. He growled that if he kept fighting like this, he would lose, accusing Yihe of tricking him. The protagonist rolled his eyes, still baffled, saying this was literally the first time they had met. That only enraged the man further. He shouted that such words infuriated him even more because his true mission had always been to kill Yihe. Then he unleashed an overwhelming burst of energy, striking the ground so hard that the entire cavern began to collapse. Yuli screamed in terror as rocks and roots rained down around them. Yihe shouted for her to get back and gathered a massive amount of radiation, blasting the ceiling apart and opening a hole where water began to flood in. He ordered Yuli and the others to escape through it. The high-level warrior tried to block their exit, lunging forward, but Zhou intercepted him, brandishing his soul-damaged sword and shouting that as long as he was there, no one would lay a hand on Yihe. The man sneered, asking if Zhou really thought he could stop a superior warrior with that toy. At that moment, Yihe's voice echoed from above. "Then why are you looking that way?" And before the man could react, an atomic explosion fist slammed into him full force, sending him crashing across the chamber. Yihe told Zhou to retreat. This enemy was too strong for him at his current level. As the man staggered to his feet, Yihe landed before him, saying coldly that he'd handle the rest. On the surface, Yuli's group broke through the lake, gasping for air, shouting in panic that the demonic branch phantom had gone berserk and was tearing the lake bed apart. Moments later, Zhou emerged as well. Yuli, breathless, looked around frantically and asked where the protagonist was. But Zhou remained silent, his eyes fixed on the dark, swirling depths below. Suddenly, an immense amount of radiation began to pour out from the lake. A giant figure wrapped in radioactive energy emerged from the water, holding something at the tip of its finger. The high-level warrior who had caused all the chaos was completely carbonized by the radiation. The group watched from the shore, confused, seeing only a colossal silhouette amid the thick smoke. Little by little, the mist cleared, and Yihe appeared at the lake's edge, borrowing some clothes from his companion. After dressing and stepping out of the water, Joe asked what that explosion had been and what they had just witnessed. Yihe replied that it was the warrior's own doing. He had used a plasma bomb to try to destroy everything along with the demonic branches. Joe grew uneasy, saying that a plasma bomb wasn't something easily obtained since it was military equipment. He wondered who that man could be to have something like that, as the explosion had seemed even more powerful than an ordinary bomb. And besides, he had seen a giant in the smoke. The protagonist tried to brush it off, claiming there had been no giant and that Joe must have been mistaken because of the explosion's flash. Internally, Yihe thought how lucky he was to have hidden it. If anyone found out about his new ability, it would cause serious trouble. He recalled that he had accidentally crushed the warrior and caused everything to implode, having no idea where the body ended up. But at least he'd obtained the core of the phantom of the demonic branches. With the situation resolved, Yuli and her group prepared to leave. She approached and apologized for getting him involved and for making him handle everything alone, promising to repay him once they left the secret realm. Yeho waved it off, saying he'd count the favor she did earlier as payment, and that if she insisted on giving him something, she'd just owe him again. After the group departed, the protagonist looked at Joe and they both laughed, saying it was time to hunt more monsters. 3 days later, at the entrance to the secret realm of the Red Tree Mountain, the two emerged, and were stunned. In just a few days, the area had turned into a city, complete with metal structures and even cargo planes flying overhead. They were amazed by Xia's infrastructure capabilities, calling it insane. Yehe then took out a huge sack of cores and dropped it on the counter. The impact was so strong that the receptionist scolded him, saying he could have broken the table. The protagonist laughed and apologized, explaining that he had too many items and that if they didn't hurry, the process would take too long. She told him not to worry, they were professionals and would handle it quickly. Yehe took a deep breath and began pulling from his spatial ring several heavy sacks full of materials until the last one was finally set down. The startled receptionist asked if he was done. He smiled and confirmed, asking her to finish the counting soon since he needed to buy some medicine. Later, at the Spiritual Medicine Evaluation Center, people were amazed, commenting that the leaf he brought was at least 300 years old, of 7-star quality, and grew in hidden places that even professional herbalists struggled to reach. Others remarked that his luck was absurd. He'd even found a liu flower, the main ingredient for crafting a sea qi pill, and that even the lesser medicines were worth at least 30 million yuan, given the current market shortage and rising prices. They said he could become rich overnight. One of the doctors scolded them, saying it wasn't luck, and that speaking that way was disrespectful. Amid the commotion, the protagonist explained that the white and green magic cores were useless to him, so he planned to sell them. He added that while fighting the Beast Tide, he'd obtained 5 rank 3 monster cores and a high-level green core with golden patterns, the one from the Phantom of the Demonic Branches. After selling everything, the total reached 27,507,000 yuan. He left satisfied, saying he'd sold all the cores and now only needed to deal with the spiritual medicines. Suddenly, a car stopped right in front of Yehe. An older man stepped out and greeted him politely, introducing himself as Li Yutian, the owner of Pinghe Pharmaceuticals. He said he'd heard that the protagonist had obtained a large amount of medicinal materials from the secret realm of the Red Tree Mountain, and that it would be great if he could sell them all to him, promising to pay above market price. Yehe thought that even though his information had gone public, the news spread too quickly, but it didn't bother him, since he needed to sell anyway. The difference was that now he wouldn't have to look for a buyer himself. The deal was completed swiftly. After the purchase, Yutian got back into the car and said that if the protagonist found more medicinal materials in the future, he should come to him without hesitation. The total sale amounted to 7,450,064 yuan. Yehe muttered to himself that even with all that money, he couldn't increase his strength by even 10%. The available cores and genetic options on the market no longer worked well for him. He sighed, realizing that his skill model was too demanding. Blood jade fruits, advanced generic potions, supplements, all extremely expensive, and he couldn't afford them all now. Then he remembered something. There was another way. He recalled martial arts, for during the entrance exam he had defeated Qingshu using only the Demora skill model. But that was nothing compared to the true power of martial arts. He decided that mastering them would be his next step. He ran off, asking Mr. Deng to wait for him. Upon arriving at the #1 high school of the city, he entered the principal's office. The principal greeted him enthusiastically, poured him tea, and even began massaging his shoulders, saying he hadn't expected to see him back so soon. The protagonist asked him not to be so formal, but Deng replied that he was doing so because Yehe was the top student in the entrance exam, a true role model for him, the teachers, and the entire city. Yehe took out a bottle and handed it to the principal, explaining that it was some medicinal wine he'd received from the Pinghe Hall. He stressed that it wasn't a gift, but rather a token of gratitude for the honor of Xia. Deng looked at the bottle, eyes shining, and said in awe that he hadn't expected the protagonist to be not only so powerful, but also such a well-mannered student. Yehe tells the principal that in fact, he would like to learn martial arts and asks if the principal knows anyone who can teach him, since he hasn't entered the university yet and can only ask for his help. Deng replies that he's sure Yehe will be accepted into Huadu University and therefore can wait a little longer, as there's no need to rush. The protagonist insists, saying he needs to become stronger, and Deng finally gives in, saying he can introduce him to someone. After all, Yehe is one of the special students, and as both principal and teacher, it's his duty to help educate them. Yehe starts praising him, saying he's really glad that teachers like him exist in the world, which makes the principal happy and flattered by the compliment. The next afternoon, the protagonist receives a phone call informing him that he got what he had asked for. Yehe thanks him and asks the principal if he can tell him which martial arts family his instructor will come from. As soon as he hears the answer, his eyes widen in shock. The Liu family from An City really wants to teach him? Around An City, two people are riding a motorcycle. The woman comments that Ji drives very fast and that it's amazing. Jie smiles, saying that's nothing and he can show her something even more impressive. Suddenly, Yehe appears beside him, warning him not to get distracted while driving at such high speed, because if something happens, people will be sad. Ji panics and starts yelling, cursing the protagonist for scaring him nearly to death and asking how he dares to compete in speed while riding a bicycle. He accelerates the motorcycle even more, saying that no matter how strong Yehe is, he'll never beat him in speed. The woman gets even more excited, saying this is way cooler. Yehe watches, slightly annoyed, until they hear an explosion behind them. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist shoots past them like a missile, saying they'll meet again soon before vanishing from sight. Ji starts trembling, wondering since when a bicycle could reach that kind of speed, while the woman, equally amazed, says he was practically faster than a plane. A bit further ahead, Yehe has already arrived and is surprised by how wealthy the martial arts family is. Their mansion is stunning. He can also sense extremely powerful presences through his magnetic field. Jingju slowly opens the gate, greets him, and invites him in. The protagonist approaches and asks if she's sad to see him again. She says no, and he changes the question, asking if that means she's happy. Jingju looks a little embarrassed and says she only greeted him because her mother asked her to, then tells him to stop talking nonsense and come inside. They walk toward the house, and as soon as they reach the main hall, she shouts that the protagonist has arrived. A woman comes down the stairs to greet him warmly and welcome him. She is Qin Lan, the leader of the Liu family and Qingzhu's mother. The protagonist is stunned by her beauty. After the examinations at the Liu family's residence, Qingzhu goes to her mother to explain herself, but Qin Lan tells her not to be nervous, saying she's already watched the video of her fight with the protagonist and praises her performance. However, she points out that Yehe's strength is beyond comprehension, and even if it were the Huadu University entrance exam, he would still be the strongest, so she shouldn't feel guilty. Qingzhu remains silent, head lowered, while her mother continues, explaining that her younger brother's talent is limited, and he can't carry on the family's legacy. That's why the future of their generation lies in Qingzhu's hands. She's the only one capable of taking on that responsibility. Qinlan holds her daughter's face, telling her she's a beautiful girl. She then explains that, unfortunately, since Qingzhu's father died very early, their family currently has no martial master, which forced them to retreat to An City. She emphasizes that if a powerful family wants to marry Qingzhu, the girl will have no right to refuse, meaning it would also mark the end of the Liu family's independence, as they'd become supporters of a stronger clan. Qinlan makes it clear that because of this, she hopes her daughter will marry the protagonist. Qingzhu is shocked and embarrassed by her mother's words, not knowing what to say. Qinlan continues, saying that Yehe is a very good person, with exceptional talent and a clearly bright future, and as far as she can tell, someone very ambitious. Qingzhu tries to speak but is left speechless, and her mother reassures her that she doesn't have to answer now. For the moment, the only thing she needs to do is get along well with Yehe. Back in the present, the matriarch of the family welcomes the protagonist, who bows respectfully and presents her with a small gift. Qinlan gets straight to the point, saying she heard from the principal that he wants to learn martial arts. Yehe confirms, and she informs him that Qingzhu will be his guide for the time being. The protagonist looks surprised and suspicious, wondering why the matriarch agreed so easily. Qinlan takes the gift, walks past him, and explains that her daughter will take him to the martial arts pavilion. Since nothing can be taken out from there, he'll be able to stay inside all day. She emphasizes that there are 3 supreme martial arts techniques at the back of the pavilion, and whether he manages to learn them or not will depend entirely on him. Yehe shows respect and thanks the Liu family for everything they're offering. The matriarch is impressed, thinking he's expressing gratitude to the entire family rather than just to her personally. To her, that feels like a promise of commitment, which is a very good sign. Because of that, she hopes to see him again in the future. The atmosphere between the 3 turns a little awkward as Qinlan keeps observing the protagonist, finding him an intelligent young man. The more she looks at him, the more she likes him. Meanwhile, Yehe notices her gaze and feels puzzled, wondering why she's looking at him in such a strange way. Qingzhu just watches, confused as to why the two are staring at each other for so long. Sometime later, while walking down a hallway toward the pavilion, Yehe notices something odd and asks Qingzhu why she's avoiding him. The girl starts trembling and nervously denies it, saying she's not doing anything. He approaches from behind and, looking closely at her, asks if she's really telling the truth. Embarrassed, Qingzhu yells, asking why he's coming so close. Yehe steps back a bit and laughs. After a short walk, they reach the end of the corridor, where Qingzhu explains that the wall ahead is made of huali stone, a special material from the secret realm that can dissolve almost any attack without breaking. Yehe studies it for a moment and asks if he can punch the wall. Confused, Qingzhu tells him he can try, but quickly starts thinking his brain must work in a really strange way. Who in their right mind would punch a wall just to test it? He gathers energy in his hand, and when she realizes it, she turns her face away, saying he's using the same shining punch technique from last time, which brings back some unpleasant memories. Yehe then strikes the wall with full force, but nothing happens. He looks at his hand, confused, and says, "It felt very strange," as if he had punched into a sea of mud, while 90% of his strength was absorbed. Qingzhu starts laughing and tells him to stop fooling around, saying she wants to show him the martial arts already, thinking to herself that even the prodigy of the city loses sometimes. The two continue to the storage area and she opens the door, revealing everything inside. Qingzhu explains that all martial arts are divided into categories like body movements, defense, training, and sword techniques, among others, and that if he wants to learn any of them, he just needs to use his identification card. Yihei then asks about the supreme techniques, so she takes him to another door, explaining that those arts are kept in a smaller stone room that can only be accessed with the card. She warns him that he won't be able to comprehend them in just one day, maybe only a little, and admits she doesn't think her mother's permission is necessarily a good thing, since he won't be able to absorb everything right away. That's why it would be better to start with the basics and learn more suitable techniques first. Yihei steps closer again and smiles, asking if she's worried about him. Slightly annoyed, Qingzhu thinks she just wants him to shut up, and replies that there's no need to worry. She knows what she's talking about. The protagonist insists, saying that if he's going to learn something, he wants to start with the strongest one, and if he didn't have the courage to try, he would have stayed home. He points to the door and asks if it's also made of black power stone. Qingzhu starts typing the code, explaining that it's a secret chamber that protects the family's most valuable martial arts, and that the black coloration shows the stone's extreme quality. As the door opens, she continues explaining that the Liu family has been collecting these high-level stones since her great-grandfather's time, specifically to build walls as secure as this one. Suddenly, the lights turn on, revealing several vaults. Qingzhu continues the tour, explaining that these aren't martial arts one can learn just by looking. They must be felt through the mark left by their creator. If he can't sense that mark, or if it conflicts with his own emotions, he won't be able to learn anything, because these techniques are alive. It's not the user who chooses them, but they who must choose the user. Yihei starts getting excited again and smiles, saying that this is perfect because there's a martial art called bone-cutting evil strike that he wants to learn. When he opens the vault, he freezes in surprise and with a trembling voice says that it's not a martial arts manual but a completely strange statue. Sitting in front of it, he stares intently and wonders if this is what it means to feel the mark, because if so, then he's already entered its world. He remembers the moment he opened the vault and saw the statue for the first time. Qingzhu explained that it wasn't just a statue, since paintings, weapons, or even simple tools could carry a martial mark. That's the true mystery of martial masters. Only they can imprint their art onto an object that lasts for generations. After finishing her explanation, she turns to leave, saying that from now on, he's on his own. Confused, Yihei asks why she's leaving and if she's not even going to explain how to learn martial arts from an object. She only replies that he must feel the mark, and if it's his destiny, he'll surely succeed. Not understanding anything, he lies down in front of the vault, wondering if everything really depends on fate. In the observation room, Qingzhu watches with irritation, muttering that she already knew he would do something exactly like that. The protagonist, meanwhile, reflects that this so-called martial mark must be some kind of spiritual world, but since he doesn't yet possess any martial chi, he has no idea how to activate it. At that moment, his nuclear reaction begins to manifest, meaning that at least a small trace of energy is present. The system appears, informing him that the user's consciousness has been detected and transported into a new space to prevent death, and that his spiritual body has been blessed. Yihei cheers, saying that at least the system works there too. Suddenly, a man appears behind him, laughing, and says that only a true man can learn his martial arts. Otherwise, he'd rather let everything rot into oblivion. With a threatening gaze, the man demands that Yihei prove he's a worthy man deserving of that power. Yihei is startled, realizing that the man looks exactly like the statue. The mysterious figure begins to speak of a storm that is approaching, and says that when it arrives, countless spirits will pay for the night, and it will be up to the protagonist to protect the temple. He emphasizes that Yihei must not allow the bodhisattva to be corrupted by evil spirits, and if he succeeds, he will receive the teaching of a powerful ability. But if he fails, he'll lose his sanity, be devoured by the spirits, and never again be able to learn any martial art. He warns that if Yihei feels afraid, there's still time to retreat. Yihei remains still, observing his surroundings until drops of water begin to fall on his face. He asks if it's raining, and at that instant, he realizes the trial has already begun. Drawing his sword, countless evil spirits appear before him. With an empty, unwavering gaze, he faces them without hesitation, cutting them down one after another. He shouts that it was obvious this challenge wouldn't let him fight barehanded, and insists there must be something deeper hidden in this place, something craving battle. Driven by adrenaline, he leaves the temple and charges into the sea of spirits, fighting like a true demon. The statue's guardian watches from his seat, saying that those spirits were summoned by his master, and that by leaving the temple, the only protected place, the protagonist has essentially signed his own death warrant. He sighs, remarking that another fool has come for the challenge, since with each generation, people only seem to get worse, and every time he has to rise to collect their corpses. However, when one of the spirits tries to attack Yihei from behind, nothing happens. Shocked, the guardian stares closely, wondering in disbelief why the evil spirits can't even touch the young man. Yihei looks at his own hand and comments that since this is a spiritual world, perhaps the system can protect him from that type of attack as well. Overcome by an uncontrollable thirst for battle, he starts laughing loudly, shouting that it feels like he has an invincible body in there, and keeps advancing, annihilating everything in his path. The guardian remains stunned, unable to comprehend what's happening before his eyes, since the boy isn't being affected by the effects of the martial mark, something that should be impossible. Yehe hears him and replies that actually there's no special reason for it. He's just someone who works hard and studies a lot. As the spirits continue to approach, the statue's guardian admits it's a good excuse, but adds that since it's clear the protagonist can handle all those spirits with extreme ease, he'll keep his promise and grant him a skill. Though whether Yehe can accept it or not will depend entirely on him. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes. As a pit opens beneath the now shattered statue, Yehe steps closer and the statue's voice explains that within that pit lies all the evil energy it cultivated during its lifetime, the technique known as flesh and bone evil art, and that the young man can, before it can even finish speaking, Yehe jumps straight into the pit. The spirit gets irritated but soon laughs, saying it's fine. After all, this is the first time someone with such a bold personality has appeared. In his prime, that man had been a hero who purified S-rank secret realms, living and dying by the power of the flesh and bone evil art. As he aged, his chi and blood began to weaken, and the evil spirits he carried lost control, killing countless people around him. The only way to stop the massacre was to end his own life, and before dying, he transferred his soul into the martial mark, sealing his technique within the statue. Though the evil spirits were suppressed along with him, it was not something an ordinary martial artist could withstand, and if Yehe fails to control them, it will mean he's unworthy of learning the flesh and bone evil art. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Qingzhu and her mother watch in horror as something begins to happen to the protagonist. Qingzhu yells in panic, asking what's going on. She suddenly stands up, staring at the screen, and comments that when Yehe first fell asleep, he seemed to be smiling as if having a pleasant dream, but now he's writhing in pain, even bleeding. Qinlan explains that Qingzhu's grandfather once obtained that martial art by chance, and in his final days tried to practice it, but was rejected by the statue and suffered severe internal injuries. Since then, no one in the Liu family has ever been able to master it. Because the power of that technique is immense, the pain in acquiring it must be as well. And since the protagonist chose the flesh and bone evil art, Suddenly she stops talking, eyes wide in disbelief. Yehe simply wakes up, as if nothing had happened. Qingzhu laughs and tells her mother that it seems his attempt to learn that martial art went a bit differently. The matriarch stays silent, frozen by the anomaly before her. Inside the spiritual world, Yehe bows respectfully to the statue in gratitude for the teaching, calmly absorbing the evil spirits around him. The statue remarks that the protagonist is the most talented person he has ever encountered in his entire life, and that perhaps Yehe will uncover the truth about the secret realms, a mission the Liu family has never been able to accomplish. Because of that, he decides to entrust everything to Yehe. The young man laughs, saying he's not that talented, since he basically cheated during the trial. Even so, all the power of the flesh and bone evil art now belongs to him, and though his system stats haven't increased, he has completely mastered the technique, doubling his combat power at the very least. Shortly after, Qingzhu and Qinlan rush into the room to check on him. The matriarch anxiously asks if he managed to learn it. Yehe smiles and replies that he learned everything there was to learn. Qinlan is shocked, shouting and asking how that's possible, since everyone in their family who ever tried to master that art remained unconscious for at least a week with their souls trapped inside the martial mark. Yet he was gone for only a few hours, or perhaps even less. She stares at him, unable to believe he truly mastered the flesh and bone evil art. Yehe acts naturally, and Qingzhu looks at him, thinking that people often call her a genius, but she's nothing compared to that monster. The protagonist notices their doubt and says that apparently they don't believe him, so he'll give them a small demonstration. He releases all his power, looking like a true demon king as waves of energy and evil spirits surge around him. He explains that these are the spirits he gained within the martial marks realm, and if he had to compare it to something, he'd say it's like a game bonus, capable of amplifying his energy and strength even further. Qingzhu stands frozen, saying that his power is truly incredible, unlike anything she's ever seen. Qinlan, on the other hand, almost melts, gazing at him with admiration and saying in a soft, enchanted tone that he really is an extraordinary man. Yehe feels a bit awkward, thinking that the lady should probably be more discreet, especially with her daughter standing right there, and that he doesn't want to end up being compared to a prime minister. Excited by his progress, Qingzhu asks if he would like to learn other supreme martial arts since there's still plenty of time left. Qinlan brings a hand to her face, thinking her daughter must be pretending to be stupid. After all, not long ago she said she didn't want to marry the protagonist, and now she's practically offering him all of the family's greatest treasures for free. Although the matriarch is already betting everything on Yehe and even considering accepting him as a son-in-law, she knows they can't just hand everything over to him at once. The protagonist, however, politely declines, saying there's no need, as the flesh and bone evil art is more than enough for now. He adds that he needs to rest since he has things to take care of at home and is exhausted. Qinlan, still clearly interested in him, replies that it's fine, and he can leave whenever he wants. But she recalls the maid mentioning that he arrived by bicycle and asks if he knows how to drive, offering one of the family's cars for him to use. Yehe thinks for a moment and says that a motorcycle like that idiot's seems way cooler, then asks if they have one to lend him. The matriarch laughs, confirming that they do, and asks if he really prefers a motorcycle, noting that his tastes are surprisingly similar to her younger son's, before offering him one from the boys' collection. Meanwhile, outside, Jie is walking across the property, commenting that he heard his mother brought in some incredibly strong guy to train there, and that he's eager to meet him personally. He says his sister is talented and beautiful, a rare twin born only once every few hundred years, and that she shouldn't get involved with just anyone. At the same time, he grows irritated remembering that strange guy on the bicycle who sped past him earlier, scared off the girl he was flirting with, and hopes he never runs into him again. But suddenly, the protagonist roars past him on one of the family's motorcycles. Ji turns around, nearly in tears, shouting in outrage, asking if that isn't the exact same guy from before, and why on earth he's riding one of his bikes. By nightfall inside his house, Yihei is preparing his meal and mutters that the monster core he ate last time didn't taste very pleasant. So this time he'll pour some sauce over it and start with the blue one. The system appears and reports, user Yihei, current physical percentage 23.8, model Demora Wild Trace, compatibility 21%, model Super Humanoid Giant, compatibility 85%, available points. Yihei looks satisfied, noting that he's managed to improve his stats and even gained some bonus points. He remembers that the last time he used the giant model in the secret realm, he reached nearly 50 meters in height, but compared to the monsters there, colossal as mountains, he was still small. Determined, he decides he must become even bigger and allocates all available points to the giant model. He then picks up the branch monster's core and declares that it's time to consume it. The moment he swallows it, an enormous surge of energy spreads throughout his body, radiating across the entire room. The system appears again, stating, model Dimora Wild Trace. After absorbing the genetic material of a plant-type life form, a special mutation has been created. Would you like to accept the model mutation? Yihei is stunned, realizing he's unlocked a new mutation, meaning his skill model can now gain new attributes. He reflects that if it's positive, it'll be amazing, but if it comes with drawbacks, it could be dangerous. Even so, he decides to accept, saying that it doesn't matter. He'll find out what it is by trusting his own luck. Another wave of energy erupts, and the system congratulates him for unlocking the S rank of the ability model. Yihei watches in awe as the system continues. When the Demora Wild Trace model reaches 100% compatibility, there will be a 2% chance of evolving into Demora, Star of the Universe. He gets excited, repeating the name and saying that Star of the Universe already sounds ridiculously powerful, though he still needs to reach maximum compatibility, and for that, he must focus entirely on Demora. Suddenly, he notices something strange outside the house. The intense glow makes him wonder if some kind of terrorist attack is happening nearby. Outside, the army has taken over the city, shouting orders to seal every exit from the park and let no one escape, demanding that soldiers search every corner for something, or someone. Inside, Yihei remains seated calmly, watching all the commotion outside and remarking that the owner of the house is an antisocial type, so no one would visit him at this hour. Besides, he hasn't ordered anything or expected anyone, which makes him wonder who could possibly be out there. He turns around and asks the woman if she knows who it is, seeing her standing by the window with a teasing smile. She comments that, judging by the situation, he really isn't an ordinary martial artist. Her plan was to slip in quietly, leave something behind, and perform a bit of mind manipulation on him. However, since she's been discovered, she warns that he'll have to suffer a little, advising him not to try running away. Yihei merely lowers his head and calmly replies that it doesn't really matter. He's already saved enough money and can just buy another house. The woman frowns, confused, asking what he's talking about. Slowly standing up, the protagonist tells her she's completely misunderstood, because it's not him who's trapped in there with her. It's her who's trapped with him. Outside, chaos erupts as an intense battle unfolds. Guards shout that they've found the target and must capture it immediately. A severely injured man, Zhou Yi, yells to Yimei that she must take the golden gene away, declaring that he'll stay behind to cover her escape. Laughing, he unleashes his power, saying that sacrificing his life is his best choice, as he activates the secret technique Burning Blood. Suddenly, a colossal wave of energy bursts through Yihei's house window, as if a Kamehameha had just been fired. Something crashes down near the guards, triggering a devastating shockwave. They back off in fear, asking if there's another enemy in the area. Zhou Yi, burned all over, looks at Yimei and asks why her white battlesuit now looks charred. He reminds her that he's risking his life to help, and demands to know why she's just lying there. Yimei replies that she managed to plant the item in the right place and that they must retreat immediately. She throws a smoke bomb and the two vanish into the sewers. Sometime later, in an abandoned and remote place, they regroup. Yimei looks around and sighs in relief, saying they finally managed to shake off the guards. Zhou Yi, impressed, comments that her nanotech armor's performance is remarkable since it repaired itself so quickly. Suddenly, Yihei's voice echoes through the room. He appears before them, calling Yimei Kitty and asking why she broke into his house. With a wild gleam in his eyes, hungry for a fight, he tells them they probably haven't realized their mistake yet. They chose to invade a random house, but it just so happened to be his. That means they'll have some fun tonight. Zhou Yi panics, shouting in disbelief and demanding to know how he found them. Yihei explains that he tracked the nuclear energy radiating from Yimei's body, but says he doesn't feel like talking, and rushes forward with a savage grin, saying it's the perfect time to test his new ability. Zhou Yi realizes he can't dodge and raises his defense, but the attack is so powerful that one of Yihei's evil spirits pierces straight through his body, making him spit blood. Not satisfied, Yihei lands another brutal punch that slams him against the wall. Yimei watches in awe, remarking that his strength is unbelievable and asking where he learned such martial arts. Yihei replies that he's a disciple of Emperor Guangla, Yimei frowns, confused, never having heard that name before, thinking she'd never imagined someone this strong living in such a small city. Zhou Yi, enraged, shouts at Yihe not to get cocky and unleashes his full power, revealing that he's also a rank 6 martial artist, not someone a mere disciple could defeat. Charging forward, he prepares to fight while the protagonist, consumed by the thrill of battle, grins even wider, saying that now things are getting interesting. Yimei silently moves in from behind, confident that Yihe has no idea her nanotech armor has an almost perfect stealth mode. Certain that he's distracted fighting Zhou Yi, she prepares for a sneak attack. But before she can even move closer, Yihe raises a single finger without looking back, and a devastating wave of energy explodes outward, striking her directly and hurling her against the wall. In a cold tone, he simply tells her not to get in the way. Furious, Zhou Yi curses his partner, calling her useless for failing even a surprise attack, and declares that he'll have to finish this himself. He charges with everything he has, while Yihe keeps laughing, taunting him to try. When their attacks collide, a shockwave shakes the ground, but to Yihe's surprise, his opponent withstands the blow without backing off. He frowns and asks how Zhou Yi's defense suddenly became so high. Zhou Yi smirks arrogantly and reveals that his true form has extremely tough skin and a rhino horn, mocking Yihe and asking if he really thinks he can still win. He explains that not only has his defense skyrocketed, but his offensive power has also greatly increased. With a feral roar, he lunges forward, unleashing a devastating strike. But before the impact can land, a colossal explosion engulfs the entire field. Even surrounded by fire and destruction, Zhou Yi keeps charging ahead, screaming furiously for the protagonist to die. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.